The sprawling city of white stone sits nestled between colossal, curved peaks, a beacon of civilization in a rugged world. Within its bustling streets, the adventure system serves as a lifeline for the impoverished, offering a path out of squalor through state-sponsored support. Having reached the age of 15, the young man decided to leave his past behind, drawn by the promise of free training, meals, and the chance to learn magic. His departure was marked by the drunken rants of his father, who cared more for his next bottle of booze than his son's future, but the boy remained undeterred as he sought to register. Upon reaching the guild's inner sanctum, he found his path barred by stern guards who permitted entry only to those already affiliated with the organization. As he was turned away, a familiar girl mocked his failure, her sharp words cutting through the air as she watched him struggle to gain access. She turned back to her companion, explaining that her own goal was to gain the strength necessary to protect herself during her travels, a motivation that drove her to join the ranks. Watching from a distance, he realized that even someone like her had managed to secure a place among the adventurers, despite others questioning her lack of spirit. He couldn't help but wonder why a girl from a seemingly decent background would choose such a perilous and gritty life, questioning what secrets she might be hiding. Ultimately, he dismissed the thought as none of his concern, focusing instead on the apprentice adventurer tag, now hanging from his neck as he officially began his journey. He begins his grueling training alongside the other recruits, their feet pounding against the dirt of the circular arena. The command to keep moving echoes through the air, driving them forward without mercy. The exertion quickly takes its toll, leaving him doubled over and gasping for breath as sweat pours down his face. His hands press firmly against his knees, trying to find the strength to remain upright while his vision blurs from exhaustion. Looming over the struggling trainees, the instructor bellows that building stamina is their first priority. He warns them that the life of an adventurer is one of constant peril, and their training must reflect that life-or-death reality. They must run as if their very lives depend on it. When the physical labor finally pauses, the focus shifts to nourishment, with the instructor commanding them to eat with the same intensity they brought to the track. For the first time in his life, he finds himself staring at a bowl overflowing with a hearty, full meal, a luxury provided by the guild. He wastes no time, shoveling the food into his mouth with desperate hunger. Every bite is a luxury he never knew at home, and he eats until his cheeks are bulging, determined to absorb every nutrient offered. Eventually, the sheer volume of food becomes a new kind of torture, leaving him slumped over in a daze of oversaturation. Despite his protests that he can't take another bite, the demand to finish every scrap remains absolute, even if it feels like his stomach might burst. As the weeks pass, the combination of relentless exercise and consistent meals begins to transform his once scrawny frame. His muscles harden, and his movements with the practice sword become more deliberate and powerful as he sheds the weakness of his past malnutrition. The transformation is striking. He now carries himself with the poise of a burgeoning warrior, his body finally catching up to his iron will. He trains with a wooden blade, his focus sharp as he masters the basics of combat alongside his peers. Life at the guild settles into a demanding routine, with each day bringing new challenges and tests of their progress. In the main hall, a group gathers around a glowing sigil on the floor, marking the next phase of their evaluation where latent talents are finally revealed. One of his peers erupts in a shout of triumph, having successfully manifested his magical potential. The young man boasts about his new status as a mage and his ambition to reach the silver sword rank in a single leap. While he looks on, aware of the gap that still exists between them, he and his fellow trainees are part of a world where silver rank denotes the seasoned elite, serving a guild that manages everything from mercenaries and hunters to dungeon explorers. Despite the grand scale of the guild, they are currently nothing more than the lowliest rookies in the entire organization. The arrogant youth leans into mock Wade, noting how he remains stoic while everyone else is panicking, sarcastically dubbing him the cool top of the class. He continues his taunts, expressing envy for Wade's seemingly carefree attitude, but Wade quietly admits his stillness isn't calm. It's pure fear of wasting all his effort. This honest admission only infuriates the bully further. Seeing the tension rise, the other trainees finally intervene, telling the hot-headed boy to stop picking on Wade and to check his own growing ego. Even as they pull him away, he glares back, snarling that Wade's constant, unshakable composure in every situation is deeply irritating. The bickering is instantly silenced by a sharp, authoritative command to fall into formation. Their massive instructor stands before them, announcing the start of the magic bestowal ceremony and explaining that their names will be called one by one to enter the chamber. He is the first to be summoned, responding with a sharp, disciplined shout before stepping forward. Moments later, he bursts back out, his face twisted in a manic grin as he displays a glowing sigil on his hand, boasting to everyone that he has successfully obtained fire magic and is destined for heroism. He stands proudly, the fire magic sigil glowing on his hand as a testament to his potential. This magic is highly sought after for its offensive power and versatility, marking him as a prime candidate for the Silver Sword. While he steps back to join the other successful candidates, the instructor acknowledges the variety of magic and calls for the next trainee, Wade. The young man steps forward with a sharp, disciplined response. As he approaches the altar, the fire wielder basks in his good fortune, surrounded by cheering peers who recognize that inheriting flame magic is like hitting a jackpot. While they celebrate, the broader scope of magic is revealed. Earth magic provides a sturdy defense, water magic can mend wounds, and wind magic grants unparalleled mobility. These elemental types are the coveted prizes for any aspiring adventurer. The further one's magic drifts from these core elements on the mystical chart, the more it is viewed as a failure. As the diagram of potential fades, Wade's sigil finally manifests, and the truth is devastating. He has been granted Juryoku, a magic that increases weight, a low-ranked ability widely considered a useless dud that only serves to hinder the user's own movements. He feels the realization hit like a physical blow, his eyes widening in shock as the weight of his misfortune sinks in. He has been cursed with what many call the slowpoke magic, the worst possible outcome. As he stares in horror at his hand, the instructor offers a final, stoic piece of advice while walking away, noting that the value of magic lies in its application. Those words offer little comfort. As he departs, the boy grits his teeth and focuses his will, refusing to accept defeat. He calls forth his first magic, shouting for the weight to increase, determined to find a way forward. He feels the result immediately as dark orbs of force slam into the ground around him. Driven to his knees by the sheer pressure of his own power, he struggles while his peers watch the pathetic display in silence. He lay there, paralyzed by the weight of his own failure, staring blankly as the reality of his situation set in. The disbelief was overwhelming. He couldn't accept that his long-awaited magic was nothing more than a cruel joke, a useless burden that left him pinned to the dirt. As he remained pinned to the earth, Frayn's mocking laughter cut through the air. The golden boy of the class looked down with pure derision, taunting him for the pathetic expression he wore while the other students watched the humiliation unfold in the training yard. Ignoring the insults, his gaze drifted to the strange, ethereal object hovering before him. He cursed the unfairness of this magic gotcha system, a mechanism that seemed designed only to inflict misery and disappointment upon those who dare to hope for greatness. Suddenly, the ground beneath him seemed to vanish, and he felt himself plummeting into a vast, white void. In the midst of the free fall, a single, confused question echoed in his mind. What was this gotcha that had so thoroughly upended his life and identity? Memories of a different existence began to flicker through his consciousness, revealing a man living a solitary, mundane life in a cramped apartment. He moved through the motions of a bleak routine, surrounded by the clutter of a life devoid of magic or excitement, preparing for another day of labor. This other version of himself was just another face in a sea of commuters, waiting on a platform as a train roared into the station. The crushing weight here wasn't magic, but the sheer anonymity of the urban grind and the relentless pressure of society. He was packed into a train car so tightly that breathing felt like a chore, surrounded by dozens of others who shared his vacant, exhausted expression. It was a world of steel and glass, far removed from the training grounds and elemental powers he had known. The cycle continued as he joined the morning exodus, a single drop in a river of suits flowing between towering skyscrapers. There was no individuality here, only the collective momentum of the workforce marching toward their respective offices. His days were spent hunched over a glowing monitor in a vast, sterile office, his world reduced to spreadsheets and the rhythmic clicking of a mouse. Around him, rows of identical desks stretched into the distance, each occupied by someone just as weary and forgotten as he was. Even the simple act of standing by the office copier felt like a heavy burden, a reminder of the endless, repetitive tasks that defined his past life. It was a life of quiet desperation, a stark contrast to the world of magic he had hoped to conquer, yet strangely familiar in its weight. He stands alone in the sterile, fluorescent-lit expanse of a modern office, a ghost in a machine of his own making. While the rest of the world sleeps, the salaryman remains tethered to his desk, his silhouette sharp against the rows of empty workstations and glowing monitors. He finally succumbs to the relentless cycle, his body surrendering to the crushing weight of exhaustion as he collapses onto the cold floor amidst a sea of discarded documents. Beside his motionless form lies the evidence of his desperate struggle to stay awake. A graveyard of empty energy drink cans and caffeine bottles, silent witnesses to a life consumed by the very work that ultimately claimed. A young man plunges through a dizzying kaleidoscope of urban structures, the memory of a past life flickering like a dying candle in the wind. He awakens with a start, the realization settling in that he has been reborn into an entirely different realm, far removed from the world of steel and glass. Lying still in the quiet of his room, he stares at the intricate sigil etched into his palm, whispering the name of the power he now commands, gravity magic. His mind races as he connects the dots between his new abilities and the scientific laws of his previous world, wondering if the slowpoke effect is merely a manipulation of universal gravitation. With a determined breath, he decides to test the limits of this power, sitting up as the morning light filters through the window of the dormitory. A strange sensation washes over him, akin to a digital progression. As he realizes his mastery over gravity has increased, he understands now that he must cultivate the magic circle on his hand to unlock further spells. He examines the glowing emblem closely, contemplating the sheer potential of this magic. If harnessed correctly, it could become an overwhelming force that defies the common sense of this world. Testing his theory, he invokes a new application of his power, weight up, and is immediately nearly crushed by the sudden, intense pressure anchoring him to the floor. Outside, the training grounds remain peaceful, unaware of the breakthrough occurring within the stone walls of the dormitory. He reflects on his humble beginnings in the slums, realizing that in a world lacking basic scientific education, his knowledge of gravity is a secret weapon that no one else even has a name for. He sits alone, the weight of his discovery feeling more like a burden than a gift. He reflects on his ignorance of the term juryoku and how his initial attempt at magic only served to make his own body feel leaden and cumbersome. As he picks at his food, the sense of hopelessness deepens. To him, this new life feels less like a second chance and more like a descent into despair. This somber mood is abruptly shattered by a familiar, mocking voice. Frayne saunters in, a wide, arrogant grin plastered across his face as he boisterously greets his peer. He continues his gloating, loudly proclaiming that elite students like themselves have finally received their ancestral magic. He laughs off the other's visible frustration, reminding him that yesterday was supposed to be a day of glory for them both. Leaning in with a predatory glint in his eyes, the blond youth begins to recount the details of the ceremony. He thrusts his hand forward, displaying the intricate magic circle etched into his skin. With a sneer, he contrasts his own power with what he perceives as the other's failure, mocking the slowpoke magic and questioning if it was supposed to be something as grand as gravity magic. The taunting escalates as he suggests that there is no future for someone with such a pathetic ability. He bluntly tells his classmate that he should simply abandon his dreams of becoming an adventurer. After a long silence, the dark-haired boy finally speaks, his voice low and steady as he addresses his tormentor by name. He looks up, a surprisingly calm and composed expression replacing his earlier gloom. He advises his rival not to squander his energy on such trivialities, pointing out that the life of an adventurer is far too dangerous to waste on petty bickering. Before the other can respond, he reaches out and firmly seizes the bully's wrist. The sudden display of strength and confidence leaves the arrogant youth speechless as he is told to simply let the matter go and focus on his meal. He stands firm as a challenger confronts him, pointing toward the notice of the upcoming mock battle. The aggressive youth demands a fight, his face contorted with a mix of anger and anticipation for the scheduled duel. Frayne continues his mockery among his peers, laughing at the idea of a struggle. But the challenge is accepted for the day after tomorrow. Despite the taunts about him potentially running away, the young man remains composed, his silence speaking louder than the insults. The arrogant youth's confidence only swells as he promises a brutal defeat, vowing to use his fire magic to completely overwhelm his opponent in the coming match. The young trainee stands alone, deep in thought about how to best utilize his weight-enhancing magic to overcome the gap in their abilities. He realizes that since his spell is limited to his own body, he must find a creative way to turn this restriction into a tactical advantage during the fight. Activating his weight-up magic, he is instantly crushed by the sudden increase in gravity, his body trembling and his breath coming in ragged gasps as he forces himself to move. Despite the immense physical strain, he continues his run, discovering that he can modulate the intensity of the weight by focusing his mental imagery. The moment he cancels the spell, his body feels light as a feather, and he bursts forward with a sudden, explosive increase in speed. This breakthrough fills him with a new sense of purpose. He has found a way to use his useless magic for high-intensity training that yields incredible results. As the day of the mock battle dawns, he joins the other students on the field, his eyes burning with determination as he prepares to reveal the true power of his gravity magic. He watches as a massive fireball erupts from Frayne's hand, the searing heat radiating across the training grounds. After the explosive display, an instructor warns Frayne about damaging the equipment while Wade collapses, gasping for air. He realizes that even with his intense physical conditioning, matching the raw power of fire magic seems like an impossible task. The fireball is a standard but deadly spell, known for its speed and destructive force against both men and monsters, making it nearly impossible to dodge for the untrained. Knowing a direct hit would be fatal, he stares down his rival. Frayne mocks him, claiming he hasn't even begun to try and suggesting that Wade needs to toughen up if he hopes to survive the path of an adventurer. The weight of his situation settles in. If he cannot find a way to bridge this gap, his dreams will end before they truly begin. Later, in the hallway, the arrogant fire user deliberately shoulders past him with a mocking apology, seeking to further humiliate him. The bully doesn't stop there, taunting him for his silence and demanding compensation for the collision, while Wade winces from the impact. He continues his verbal assault, laughing at Wade's slowpoke magic while boasting about his own superior wind magic and speed. In response, the young trainee utters a challenge that stops his tormentor in his tracks, his face twisting in sudden, confused anger. Without another word, he activates his magic, dark energy swirling around his fist as he prepares to prove the true utility of his weight-up spell. He stood motionless over his fallen opponent, the dust settling around them as the other boy lay curled on the stone ground. Looking down with a cold, unwavering gaze, he uttered a single, biting word, pathetic. As the sun beat down on the training grounds, the surrounding students whispered in confusion, unable to comprehend how the confrontation had ended so abruptly. Some wondered if he had struck a blow they missed, while others insisted his rival had simply collapsed under his own weight. The moment of tension was soon eclipsed by the booming voice of the instructor, who stood at the edge of a massive circular arena, announcing the official commencement of the mock tests. He commanded the attention of the entire group, explaining that now that they had all manifested their magical gifts, they would be paired off to test their mettle in direct combat. Approaching with a sneer, the light-haired boy taunted him once more, calling him a slowpoke and asking if the previous day's humiliation had already faded from his memory, to which he responded with a calm, steady defiance. The spectators continued to doubt him, comparing the vast difference between fire magic and his own perceived weakness, while his opponent vowed to utterly destroy him in the coming match. Ignoring the chatter, he tightened his grip on a sturdy wooden shield, the weight of the equipment grounding him as he prepared for the inevitable clash. His rival grew impatient, barking orders for him to hurry up and claiming to be fully prepared to crush any resistance he might offer. The arrogant youth laughed at the sight of the shield, mocking him for being a coward who hid behind wood, but he remained unfazed, simply stating that he was ready to begin. He acknowledges the danger of the opponent's fire magic, while the other boy promises to instill true fear in him during their upcoming clash. Their eyes lock in intense focus as the signal to begin the duel echoes across the training grounds. Immediately, the two combatants take their positions in the center of the dusty arena, surrounded by wooden training targets. Under the watchful eye of the scarred instructor, the young warrior readies his wooden shield, bracing for the inevitable magical onslaught. The battle erupts as the fire wielder lunges forward, forcing the boy to dodge and weave through a barrage of heat. His opponent mocks his defensive movements, comparing him to a cornered rodent, while the boy realizes the dire nature of his situation. A massive fireball slams into his shield, the wood splintering and charring under the intense heat. He stares at the crumbling defense, knowing that a second direct hit would mean certain defeat. Seeing his opponent struggle, the arrogant youth demands a direct confrontation without cheap tricks, prompting the boy to calmly deactivate the weight-increasing spell he had been maintaining on his own body. Freed from his self-imposed burden, he surges forward with blinding speed, catching the fire user completely off guard. The blonde youth tries to react, but his movements feel sluggish compared to the boy's sudden burst of agility. As he maneuvers around his foe, he reflects on his discovery. His gravity magic can be transferred to anything he touches. With a quick contact, he whispers that the other is now the one who is too slow. Now positioned behind his bewildered opponent, the young mage watches as the crushing weight of his magic takes hold, effectively slowing the other boy's movements to a crawl. He seizes the opening, knowing that even a momentary lapse in his opponent's defense is all he needs to secure victory. That single second proves sufficient as a concussive force erupts, catching the fire wielder completely off guard. The impact sends him spiraling through the air, his balance completely shattered by the sudden surge of weight and momentum. He crashes into the wooden structures at the edge of the arena, the breath driven from his lungs in a pained, ragged gasp. Seeing the decisive blow, the instructor calls the match and declares a winner to the disbelief of the gathered crowd, while the victor calmly deactivates his magic and prepares to walk away. Slumped amidst the splintered wood, the defeated boy mutters a curse, his pride stung far worse than his physical body. His frustration boils over into a silent, internal scream of rage as he glares at the back of the peer who just humiliated him in front of everyone. Recalling his supposed destiny as a chosen hero of fire, he refuses to accept defeat at the hands of someone he considers inferior. In a fit of madness, he ignores the match's end and channels a massive, unstable fireball. With a roar of desperation, he unleashes the torrent of flames, but the magic is too volatile to control, resulting in a chaotic explosion that engulfs the immediate area. The arena turns to chaos as the aggressor is consumed by his own out-of-control flames, screaming in agony while the instructor and others rush forward, frantically calling for anyone with water magic to intervene before it's too late. He lies broken on the arena floor as the instructor bellows for him to remain conscious. Wade, however, shows no remorse, glancing back with a cold gaze. He mutters that Frayne was a fool to expect mercy after launching such a cowardly ambush. As the crowd swarms the fallen boy, Wade begins to distance himself from the chaos he finished. He continues his steady pace, leaving the frantic scene behind. His expression is unreadable, a stark contrast to the panicked murmurs of the onlookers gathered by the training equipment. Among the crowd, a lone girl watches him, her eyes fixed on his retreating form as he moves toward the edge of the grounds. She speaks his name softly, her voice barely a whisper amidst the lingering tension. Her brow is furrowed with a complex mix of worry and realization, as if seeing him clearly for the first time. The weight of the duel's brutal conclusion hangs heavy in the air between them. Though he does not turn back to meet, Wade stands exhausted, his breath coming in ragged gasps as the weight of his recent victory settles. Around him, the other trainees whisper in hushed, incredulous tones, marveling at how he managed to defeat a top-ranked student like Frayne using only the supposedly weak slowpoke magic. He listens to the shifting tide of their opinions, noting how quickly their mockery has turned to wary respect. Despite the change in atmosphere, he remains guarded, deciding that it's best to maintain his distance and simply focus on completing his training before their paths inevitably diverge. The massive instructor commands their attention, announcing the start of practical training within the shallow levels of a nearby dungeon. He explains that they must now organize themselves into parties of at least 2, but no more than 6, leaving the formation of these teams entirely up to the students. After the announcement, the scarred veteran pulls the young man aside to offer a stern warning. While acknowledging his undeniable talent, the trainer emphasizes that his poor communication and lack of trust in others could be fatal in a real combat situation, urging him to find a partner he can truly rely on. He clenches his fist tightly, the physical tension reflecting his internal struggle as he reflects on his previous life. Memories of being a lonely corporate slave haunt him, and though he knows he lacks experience in making friends, he is determined to put in the effort required to succeed in this new world. His initial attempts to reach out are met with immediate rejection, as a group of his peers awkwardly declines his offer to join them. One girl apologetically explains that a member of their team is simply too intimidated by his presence to work alongside him. The cold reception continues with another group, who openly question why they would ever party with someone who treated Frayne so ruthlessly. Even those who acknowledge his strength offer excuses, claiming their rosters are already full and leaving him standing alone once more. Walking through the bustling training grounds, he contemplates his dire situation, knowing that failing to form a party will cost him the graduation credits he desperately needs. The thought of being forced back into the squalor of the slums fuels his resolve to keep searching, despite the mounting discouragement. A sudden, sharp exclamation cuts through his thoughts, drawing his attention toward a nearby confrontation. He turns to see a young woman with a commanding presence asserting herself, her voice filled with a strange, insistent energy. This newcomer, a talented water mage known as Drop, points an accusing finger at a quiet girl with long, dark hair. Drop demands that the girl join her party, arguing that as an ice user, she's the only logical choice to complement her own reigning mastery over water magic. She continues her verbal assault, claiming that without her superior water magic, the other girl's ice abilities are utterly useless. Wade interrupts the confrontation, demanding to know what is happening, but the arrogant mage ignores him, doubling down on her offer to save the girl from her own mediocrity. He tries to interject again, but she snaps back instantly, warning him not to interfere. She labels him a low-grade mage who has no business sticking his nose into the affairs of his betters, clearly annoyed by his presence. The tension escalates as she expresses her disbelief that someone from the slums could possibly outperform her, a member of a prestigious merchant family. She demands to know what he thinks he's doing and orders him to leave before her frustration boils over. The quiet girl turns to Wade with a trembling voice, asking if he would be willing to form a team with her. This request triggers a fit of hysterical laughter from the water mage, who finds the idea of anyone wanting to partner with an ice user absolutely ridiculous. He doesn't hesitate for a second, accepting the proposal with a bright, determined smile that cuts through the mockery. The two of them walk away together, leaving the stunned water mage behind. The matter is settled, and a new partnership is forged in the face of ridicule, much to the chagrin of those watching. He formally introduces himself as a gravity mage as they distance themselves from the conflict. The girl, visibly relieved and grateful, shares her name as Ice, expressing her sincere happiness at finally having a partner for the trials ahead. The pair stands ready at the edge of the bustling town, fully equipped for the challenges ahead. Wade carries a sturdy blade at his hip, while Ice stands beside him with her own weapon, their resolve hardened for the upcoming dungeon training. They listen intently as the scarred instructor barks out final instructions to the assembled trainees a few days later. He sets strict limits for their first foray, commanding them to venture no further than the first layer and to return immediately after slaying 3 monsters. He continued his stern briefing, emphasizing that any injury was grounds for an immediate retreat. His voice boomed across the assembled trainees as he issued a final, non-negotiable command. Under no circumstances were they to venture onto the second floor, warning that if they found themselves outmatched, they must flee at once. Amidst the heavy silence of the group, one student spoke up, seeking clarification. The veteran warrior listened as Drop stepped forward, her posture radiating a confidence that bordered on arrogance. She questioned the necessity of such strict precautions, arguing that as capable magic users with prior combat experience against monsters, the limitations felt excessive. He acknowledged her perspective with a grunt, though his expression remained grim as he prepared to counter her dismissal of the danger. Beyond the safety of the training grounds lay the dungeon, a place of pure, concentrated malice that bore no resemblance to the natural world. It was a labyrinth designed with the sole purpose of extinguishing life, a dark maw waiting to swallow the unwary. Yet, the harsh truth remained. Those who could endure the horrors within its depths would find themselves forged into survivors capable of facing any challenge the world could offer. Returning his focus to the group, the massive man dropped a bombshell, To graduate, they wouldn't just be surviving the entrance, but were required to reach the 5th floor. A wave of disbelief washed over the trainees, with some whispering that he was surely just trying to intimidate them with such an impossible goal. His scarred face didn't flicker, his gaze remaining as cold and unyielding as the stone walls around them. He then revealed the ultimate incentive, a bronze adventurer's badge that would be awarded to anyone who successfully cleared the trial. The mention of the rank sent a ripple of excitement through Wade and his peers, the prospect of becoming certified adventurers suddenly making the looming danger feel like a worthwhile gamble. The weight of the potential achievement hung in the air, momentarily overshadowing the fear of the depths. But the moment of hope was short-lived as he roared a final, thunderous warning that cut through their chatter. His jaw set in a fierce snarl. He made it clear that the path ahead was far from a simple test of skill. There was a catch to this promise of glory, one that threatened to turn their newfound ambition back into cold, hard dread. The massive instructor stands before the gathered trainees, his voice booming with a grim reality check. He warns them that 1 in every 3 of them is likely to perish within the dungeon's depths, noting that 9 trainees lost their lives just last year attempting to reach the 5th floor. He then scans the silent, intimidated crowd, asking if there are any further questions. The trainees offer a chorus of nervous affirmations, to which he responds with a final, stern warning. Never make the mistake of underestimating the dungeon. With a final, commanding shout, the veteran warrior declares the start of their training, his voice echoing across the stone buildings of the training grounds. Amidst the bustle of the departing groups, the young girl with long, dark hair fidgets nervously, suggesting to her companion that they simply try their best. The boy, however, responds with a confident grin, ready to face the challenge ahead. Their moment of preparation is interrupted by a sharp, mocking voice as a young woman with shoulder-length hair approaches. She scoffs at the boys' slowpoke magic and the girls' supposedly half-baked skills, questioning if they truly intend to enter the dungeon as a pair despite the instructor's warnings. He turns his gaze toward the intruder, his expression hardening as he bluntly asks what she actually wants from them. She ignores his cold tone, continuing her verbal assault by labeling the girl a total klutz and clueless. With an air of feigned generosity, she suggests that the girl should abandon her partner and join her own party instead. The young man's eyes narrow into a sharp, piercing glare as he stares her down, his voice low and flat as he asks if she is truly as foolish as she sounds. This retort sends her into a fit of rage, her face contorting as she points an accusing finger and screams that he is the uneducated idiot. Finally, she storms away in a huff, shouting a cruel wish for them to perish like stray dogs in the dungeon. Unfazed by the outburst, the boy simply reassures his companion and leads the way forward, leaving the bitter encounter behind. He stands with his companion, discussing the recent encounter with the pushy girl and her attempt to split them up. She expresses a quiet hope that they can remain friends even after their training concludes, and he agrees, suggesting they simply go with the flow of their new lives as adventurers. Though she seems hesitant, she eventually nods in agreement as they prepare for the descent. The two of them step onto a creaking wooden lift, which begins its slow, rattling journey down into the dark, jagged throat of the cavern. Once they reach the bottom, he strikes a flint to ignite a torch, the sudden flare of light pushing back the oppressive shadows. With a steady hand, he draws his sword, the metallic ring echoing through the damp air. With the torch held high, he leads the way into a narrow, winding tunnel, his expression hardening with focus as they leave the safety of the lift behind. As they move deeper, he remarks on the wisdom of following the instructor's advice to wear heavier gear, feeling the weight of his pack and the protection it offers. She agrees, her voice echoing softly in the confined space as they carefully navigate the uneven ground. He continues to lead them through the cavernous depths, mindful of the warnings they've received since training began. Dungeons are places of pure danger, where the unpredictable is the only constant. His mind wanders to the legends of those who found fortune within these walls, like the great merchant who was once an explorer, or the king who built his country's wealth on plundered dungeon treasure. Yet, he knows the cost. For every life the dungeon claims, it grows richer and more perilous, summoning stronger beasts to guard its secrets. Despite the allure of gold and the potential for a stable life as a knight or skilled hunter, he finds that the promise of treasure holds little personal appeal for him. Reaching a dark precipice, he tosses the lit torch into the void to gauge the depth. It tumbles through the air, illuminating the jagged walls of the pit as it falls, while he and his companion watch intently to see where it lands. He grins with a fierce, almost predatory intensity as he activates his magic. Dark, heavy orbs manifest around him, signaling the surge of his weight-up ability. Nearby, the monstrous denizens of the pit, grotesque, snarling creatures with jagged teeth, are caught in the sudden, crushing force of his power, their bodies buckling under the invisible pressure. Wade leaps through the air, his movements a blur as he engages the grotesque creatures. He narrowly avoids a swipe from a goblin's claws, his eyes fixed on his target with intense focus. He channels his magic while surrounded by the feral monsters, the air heavy with the manifestation of his weight-altering power. He strikes with increased force, but the sheer number of enemies begins to overwhelm his defenses. A sudden blow catches him off guard, forcing a pained grunt from his lips as he realizes with a jolt of alarm that his overconfidence has led him into a dangerous position. Just as the monsters close in, a torrent of freezing energy erupts, encasing the lead goblin in a jagged pillar of ice. He stares in shock, his gaze shifting to find the source of this sudden intervention. This unexpected rescue brings to mind the events that transpired shortly after he first teamed up with the girl known as Ice. They stood together in the vast, sun-drenched training arena, surrounded by stone arches. She was humbled to a fault, apologizing for what she perceived as her own inadequacy despite the raw power of her magic. He tried to reassure her, questioning why she would consider herself a mere rookie when her talent was so evident, and then requested a demonstration on a nearby training dummy. With a focused breath, she unleashed her ice blow, the force of the freezing strike completely obliterating the wooden scarecrow into a cloud of splinters and frost. He watched the display with keen interest, noting that her magic seemed to reach its full potential when combined with a source of water. Without it, the freezing process was significantly more difficult to initiate. Curious about the limitations of her gift, he asked if she could demonstrate the technique without any external water source. Though she seemed hesitant and a bit unsure of herself, she eventually agreed to show him the results. She extended her hand once more, and while the effect was less explosive than before, a sharp chill filled the air as frost crept across the training targets, proving her capability even in less than ideal conditions. She stands beside him, her expression clouded with a mix of hesitation and vulnerability as they discuss her magical abilities. Looking down, she struggles to find the words, eventually admitting that her repertoire is far more limited than one might expect. He listens in silence, his gaze fixed on her as she reveals the extent of her current capabilities. She bows her head in a deep apology, lamenting that she only knows a single spell, yet she offers to compensate by handling any menial task or carrying their supplies. He immediately dismisses her guilt, insisting that there is no need for such contrition and that he is certainly not one to look down on another's magic. To put her at ease, he shares his own struggles, explaining that his gravity magic is arguably far less useful since it merely increases his own weight for training purposes. With a reassuring smile, he encourages her to have confidence, pointing out that her ice magic possesses a practical utility that far outshines his own limited gift. Wade suggests she try placing her hand on the object to channel her magic. She hesitates, clearly unsure of her own capabilities despite his encouragement. Suddenly, she unleashes a devastating ice blow, the sheer force of the magic shattering the target into a cloud of frozen shards. They both stare in disbelief at the raw power she just demonstrated. He praises her, confirming his suspicion that her ice magic is truly exceptional. She offers a shy, modest smile, though she doesn't quite seem to believe her own strength yet. The young man thanks her for the rescue, admitting he was stunned by her speed, which seemed even faster than Frane's. He reflects that his own gravity magic finally served a practical purpose in the heat of the moment, allowing him to contribute to their survival. As they move deeper into the cavern, he continues to marvel at how her spell instantly neutralized the enemy, a feat he finds truly amazing. Their progress is halted by a strange marking on the floor. He crouches down to inspect it, suspecting it might be a hidden poison trap left for the unwary explorers. He decides they should collect the trapped item to sell later, warning her about its lethality. She responds with newfound enthusiasm, her eyes bright with the thrill of their successful cooperation. Meanwhile, in another part of the dungeon, Drop leads her own party through the gloom. She finds herself dwelling on her past with the girl she calls Ice, remembering how she tried to pull her out of her shell and into her own social circle, even offering her a spot in her elite party. She is consumed by a bitter jealousy, unable to fathom why her former friend would choose to partner with a slum rat like Wade. To her, he is nothing more than a low-tier magician who doesn't deserve to be by Ice's side, and she wonders what hold he could possibly have over her. Her internal monologue is cut short as the party rounds a corner and comes face-to-face with a nightmare. Towering, skeletal figures loom over them, their presence radiating a soul-chilling dread that leaves the group frozen in terror. She and her companions find themselves staring into the face of pure hunger as a grotesque creature looms over them. Its wild, matted hair frames a face twisted by an insatiable craving, its wide eyes fixed on its next meal. With a sickening grin, it reveals rows of needle-sharp teeth dripping with saliva, its only thought articulated in a single guttural rasp: food. The young warrior delivers a powerful blow, sending the goblin reeling with a pained shriek as he tests his combat skills in a frantic skirmish. After the threat is neutralized, he takes a moment to catch his breath and cancels the active magic on his hand, the glowing sigil fading from his palm. His companion, Ice, watches in awe, expressing her amazement at how he seemed to soar through the air and fight with such effortless grace. He casually explains that it is a new spell he has only recently acquired, noting that he spotted the wandering goblin and decided it was the perfect opportunity to test its effectiveness. As they continue their journey, the conversation turns to the specifics of this new magic, represented by the complex sigil etched onto his hand. Later, standing alone in the center of a vast, silent arena, he reflects on the nature of his new weight-down ability, understanding it to be a gravity-based spell that reduces his mass rather than increasing it. With a grin of anticipation, he prepares to activate the spell once more, eager to see the extent of its power in a controlled environment. Upon activation, he feels an incredible lightness, finding himself leaping to impossible heights as if gravity had lost its grip on him entirely. He soars high above the arena and the surrounding city, a tiny figure against the sprawling urban landscape, experiencing the true freedom of flight. He grins with newfound confidence, the sensation of his magic finally clicking into place. Floating effortlessly above the cavern floor, he explains to his companion that this is the essence of his ability, a fundamental manipulation of his own weight that allows him to defy gravity at will. Continuing his explanation, he reveals that the impressive maneuver he performed earlier wasn't just a single trick, but a sophisticated stacking of this lightness spell with a concentrated weight boost. As he speaks, a soft glow emanates from his hand, illustrating the magical energy he is now beginning to master. His companion is visibly impressed by the revelation, but their moment of triumph is shattered by a blood-curdling scream echoing through the winding tunnels. The sound is raw and desperate, instantly putting them both on high alert. He recognizes the voice as likely belonging to one of their classmates, and the proximity of the cry suggests that danger is lurking just around the next bend. Wade and Ice rush through the dim dungeon corridors, their footsteps echoing against the stone. They spot a group of their peers in dire straits ahead, and he urgently calls out to her, knowing they must intervene before it is too late. As they round the corner, he brandishes his torch, only to freeze in horror at the sight before them. A Manticore, a beast far too powerful to be roaming the first floor, looms over the fallen trainees, its presence an impossible anomaly. The creature is a nightmare made flesh, a massive lion with a tail composed of rattling human-like skulls, ending in a lethal stinger. It snarls, its predatory gaze fixed on the survivors as it prepares to strike again. He quickly devises a desperate strategy, shouting to Ice that he will charge in to draw its attention. She acknowledges the plan with a tense nod, preparing to move into position behind the beast while he provides the necessary distraction. The young warrior unleashes his magic, conjuring heavy, dark spheres that anchor the Manticore to the ground with crushing force. The beast bellows in agony and frustration as the sudden weight pins its massive limbs, momentarily halting its rampage. Nearby, a wounded trainee sobs in absolute terror, his spirit broken as he pleads for his life amidst the chaos. The harsh reality of the dungeon has stripped away his courage, leaving him trembling and helpless on the cold floor. While she focuses her energy on healing the fallen boy, Wade scans the room for any other signs of life. He calls out to the remaining survivors, demanding that anyone still capable of holding a weapon find the strength to stand and fight by his side. A fellow trainee joins him, clutching a heavy stone block with trembling hands as they face the monster together. Though dwarfed by the creature's shadow, they stand their ground, refusing to let fear dictate their final moments. The Manticore recovers from the initial shock of the magic, its predatory eyes locked onto the two boys with murderous intent. It crouches low to the ground, muscles tensing as it prepares to pounce and end their defiance once and for all. It lets out a low, guttural growl that vibrates through the very air of the chamber. The beast's face is a mask of primal rage, its teeth bared as the final confrontation reaches its breaking point. The beast lets out a chilling, human-like cry for help, its voice echoing through the dungeon as it laments its pain. Wade and his companion stand frozen, their weapons drawn, but their minds reeling from the impossible sound. As the other trainee whispers in denial, Wade begins to wonder if the monster truly understands their tongue, or if it is merely mimicking the screams of its past victims to lower their guard. They watch as the monster's face contorts, its wide, bloodshot eyes fixed on them with a terrifying intensity. It lets out a low, guttural growl, the human-like features of its face twitching in a grotesque display of agony. It screams once more, a desperate plea for salvation that contrasts sharply with its monstrous form. Wade, refusing to be swayed by the psychological trickery, charges forward with his shield raised. He roars that the beast is nothing but a nuisance, determined to end the encounter despite the creature's haunting, repeated cries for mercy. The young warrior's eyes widen in shock as a strike fails to bring the beast down. The elder ghoul sneers, mocking the boy's naive belief that such a blow could ever hope to stop its relentless hunger. The creature retaliates with a crushing blow, its massive strength overwhelming the boy's defenses. He tries to channel his magic once more, but his body refuses to respond, leaving him vulnerable to the monster's fury. The sheer force of the impact sends him skidding across the stone floor, a cloud of dust rising from the impact. His companions can only watch from the sidelines, paralyzed by the sudden turn of the tide. He struggles to push himself up, his breath coming in ragged gasps as the exhaustion of his previous efforts finally takes its toll. Nearby, the girl calls out his name, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and desperation. Despite the blade having pierced its chest, The monster remains upright, its unnatural vitality defying death. The two boys stare at the creature, realizing that what should have been a killing blow was merely a temporary setback for such an abomination. In the heat of the struggle, a memory of the instructor's harsh lessons surfaces. The veteran had once explained that some foes possess a tenacity that allows them to keep moving even after receiving fatal wounds, emphasizing the need to completely neutralize an opponent. The reality of their situation becomes clear as the elder ghoul continues to loom over them, its presence a suffocating weight. Wade realizes that they are facing a threat far beyond their initial expectations. Seeing his friend's weakened state, the peer boy steps forward with his shield raised, determined to hold the line. He tells Wade to fall back, taking it upon himself to face the monstrosity alone for the moment. He refuses to abandon the fight, pushing through the pain to stand alongside his comrade. Even without a weapon, he prepares to use his bare fists, while the monster's agonizing shrieks fill the cavern, its hunger driving it into a frenzy. The two trainees quickly coordinate their next move, understanding that teamwork is their only hope. While one prepares to charge and create an opening, the other plans to circle around and provide a distraction, hoping to finally bring the nightmare to an end. He stands his ground, tossing small stones into the air with a cocky grin. He calls out to the monstrous creature, mocking its hideous appearance and daring it to approach so he can deliver a finishing blow to its midsection. In response to the provocation, the beast unleashes a deafening roar and lunges forward with primal fury. He nimbly leaps backward, narrowly avoiding the creature's grasping claws as it crashes into the space he occupied moments before. While the monster's attention is fixed on him, his companion seizes the opening, raising a heavy, blunt weapon high above his head. The young trainee brings the massive hammer down with all his might, the weight of the strike aimed directly at the creature's head. The monster's eyes bulge in a mixture of rage and sudden realization as the shadow of the impending impact looms over its distorted features. With a sickening crunch, the head of the hammer is driven deep into the creature's gaping, needle-toothed maw, silencing its roar. He holds the weapon steady, bracing against the monster's weight, while Wade watches the desperate struggle with clenched fists, his eyes wide as he waits for the beast to finally succumb. The elder ghoul shrieks in a chorus of agony as the first strike connects, its grotesque features contorted by the sudden pain. The brave trainee, peer boy, slams his heavy hammer into the ground with immense force, invoking a quake spell that causes the very floor to heave and destabilize the beast. The force of the magical impact ripples through the stone, tossing the massive, hairy creature into the air like a ragdoll. Seeing an opening, Wade shouts for Ice to take action, and she acknowledges him with a sharp nod, already channeling her power. She unleashes her ice blow, a freezing gust of concentrated magical wind aimed directly at the vulnerable, airborne monster. The frigid blast rapidly crystallizes around the elder ghoul, locking its grotesque form in a thick, jagged layer of solid ice before it can even hit the ground. As the monster stands frozen and immobile, the trainee who initiated the attack wonders aloud if the battle is finally over, his breath visible in the newly chilled air. He is interrupted as Wade approaches, politely asking to borrow the heavy hammer for a moment to finish what they started. With the weapon in hand, the young warrior looms over the frozen head of the beast, his expression one of grim, unwavering resolve. He brings the hammer down with a thunderous boom, shattering the ice and the monster within into 1,000 harmless fragments. He lands amidst the settling dust, the immediate threat finally neutralized by their combined efforts. Seeing the aftermath, his companions stand frozen in disbelief, the young trainee barely able to whisper his amazement at the display of power they just witnessed. Without a moment's rest, the young warrior begins gathering his equipment, his voice cutting through the silence as he commands the others to move. He insults their hesitation, calling them useless weaklings, and orders everyone capable of walking to assist in carrying the wounded out of the depths. As the group organizes themselves, he maintains a grim, focused expression, watching as they prepare a makeshift stretcher for those unable to stand. They begin the long trek back through the winding, cavernous tunnels, the flickering light of their torches casting long shadows against the jagged stone walls as they carefully transport their fallen comrades. Leading the way, the young girl's eyes well with tears, her face etched with a mix of relief and lingering trauma from the ordeal they barely survived. The instructor stands before the gathered trainees, his voice booming as he cancels the day's training. He explains that such incidents with stray monsters separated from their packs are common occurrences in this line of work, requiring the facility to be secured. He turns his attention specifically to the two who face the beast, remarking that while it is typical for rookies to be slaughtered by a lone Manticore, they somehow manage to survive and overcome the threat against all odds. Offering a rare word of encouragement, the massive man tells them to continue their efforts but warns them against pushing themselves to the point of death, emphasizing that survival is the ultimate goal of their training. As they begin to depart, he gives them a final nod of approval for their performance. Wade looks back with a faint, confident smile, the weight of the battle finally lifting as they leave the training grounds behind. Walking through the town, The boy beside Wade sighs heavily, his shoulders slumped from the sheer physical and mental exhaustion of the day's harrowing events. The silence is broken when Wade turns to him and casually asks for his name, a question that leaves the other boy completely stunned after everything they just went through together. He stares back with a look of pure disbelief and slight hurt, realizing that despite their life-and-death struggle, he hasn't made any lasting impression on his companion. Wade clarifies his stance with blunt honesty, stating that he only remembers those he is close to or those who have achieved fame, mentally categorizing his other peers as mere weaklings not worth his attention. Seeing the awkwardness, the girl steps in to apologize on Wade's behalf, gently explaining to the boy, Clay, that his savior is simply a bit of an oddball with a unique way of viewing the world. While Clay can only offer a strained, weary smile in response, Wade remains stoic, the label of oddball echoing in his mind without causing him the slightest bit of concern. He is approached by the boy he just saved, who introduces himself with newfound enthusiasm as Clay, a practitioner of earth magic. The boy's gratitude is evident in his bright expression, a stark contrast to the life-threatening situation they just escaped. After a firm handshake with the earth mage, the young girl steps forward, shyly introducing herself as Ice and revealing her affinity for ice magic. The group begins to solidify as they acknowledge each other's roles and abilities in the wake of their shared ordeal. Observing his new companions, he notes the simplicity of their names, finding it a relief that they align so perfectly with their elemental specialties. It is a rare moment of mental ease, as the straightforward nature of their identities makes them far easier to remember than most. This internal reflection leads him to consider his own moniker, Wade Wade, a name that mirrors the very nature of his own magic. He realizes that he is in no position to judge the simplicity of others when his own identity is so inextricably linked to his power over gravity and mass. As the three of them navigate the bustling streets of the town, a nagging question begins to form in his mind regarding the protocols of their training. The transition from the dark, oppressive atmosphere of the dungeon to the mundane activity of the city is jarring. Because of the recent brush with death, Clay voices his concern, questioning why the Academy permits parties of only 2 when a single Manticore nearly wiped them out. He argues that if such a monster had attacked a 2-person party, they would have stood no chance of survival. In response, he explains the grim reality that dungeons are essentially mazes of pure malice, designed specifically to ensure that those who enter do not return. This inherent cruelty is what makes every descent a gamble with one's life, regardless of the party's size. Hearing this, Clay logically concludes that if dungeons offer only guaranteed death and no reward, the most sensible course of action would be to simply go home. He questions the very purpose of their mission if the environment is intentionally designed to be a slaughterhouse. He clarifies that while most sensible people avoid small groups due to the extreme risk, the cruelty of the dungeon environment is a known factor they must face. He notes that entering with fewer than 3 people is widely considered a death sentence, yet the training continues. To further illustrate the danger, he mentions the specific regulation banning solo entries to minimize casualties, leaving Clay visibly bewildered by the harshness of their world. The revelation that such rules exist only to mitigate the inevitable loss of life underscores the grim nature of their chosen path. He continues his grim explanation as they walk through the bustling town, noting that while a partner can save a life, the inherent malice of the dungeon ensures that no number of allies can truly guarantee safety. He explains that the twisted nature of these mazes means death is always a lurking possibility, regardless of party size, as the environment itself is designed to be lethal. He stops before a local equipment stall, where the sight of heavy plate armor prompts the young trainee to reconsider his own protection. Clay realizes that if the dungeon is truly as malicious as described, his standard-issue leather armor won't be enough to ensure his survival, and he contemplates spending extra money for something sturdier that might actually withstand a blow. He is met with a knowing look from his companion, who acknowledges that after witnessing the brutal fate of others, specifically seeing a party member shredded by a monster, it is only natural to seek better defenses. Despite the clear necessity of the upgrade, the boy can't help but worry about the high cost of such specialized gear, wondering if his savings will be enough. Seeing her friends prepare for the dangers ahead, the quiet girl finally speaks up, tentatively expressing her own desire to find better gear. She admits that she also wants to upgrade her equipment, perhaps realizing that her current attire offers little protection against the horrors they are bound to face in the depths of the dungeon. Wade suggests they all go gear shopping together next time, noting that they still have loot from their recent battle to sell. Ice softly agrees, her usual stoicism slightly softened by the shared victory. He is met with a look of pure disbelief from Clay, who is overjoyed to be included in the group's future plans and can hardly believe his luck. The young trainee's face breaks into a wide, ecstatic grin as he confirms his happiness, his eyes sparkling with genuine gratitude. He goes on to praise Wade's bravery, claiming that watching him stand his ground against the Manticore without backing down, even after losing his weapon, felt like witnessing the birth of a true hero. Ice joins in the admiration, vividly describing how Wade's bare-fisted strike shattered the beast's defense before he moved with blinding speed to create an opening. Wade, however, tries to downplay his actions with a humble shrug. She insists that without his heroic intervention, they might not have survived the encounter, calling him a savior who prevented a potential tragedy for them all. The young man remains humble, however, pointing out that it was Clay's unwavering spirit and Ice's final, decisive blow that truly secured their victory in that desperate situation. He sees Clay swell with pride at the sincere compliment, while Ice turns away, her face flushing as she tries to hide her embarrassment at being praised so openly. She scoffs and calls him simple-minded for his constant modesty, but Wade just smiles, reiterating that he truly believes they were all incredible in their own right. They're suddenly interrupted by the arrival of Drop, who approaches the group with a stern expression. Wade looks up, his tone shifting to one of wary curiosity as he asks what she wants. She maintained a cool, almost indifferent expression, claiming she had merely overheard something peculiar and felt compelled to offer a brief remark. Wade, however, was not so easily brushed off, demanding to know exactly what she found so strange about their situation. He immediately pushed back against her dismissive tone, his voice rising in defense of his teammate. He couldn't accept her claim that Ice's contributions were meaningless, but the other girl remained blunt, arguing that half-hearted magic like hers couldn't possibly have been of any real help in the heat of battle. Continuing her harsh assessment, she pointed out that the group lacked the necessary firepower to land a decisive blow, leaving Ice to shoulder a dangerous risk alone. She then turned her scrutiny toward Wade, criticizing his decision to prioritize healing a comrade while the Manticore was still a direct threat, a move she deemed reckless and potentially fatal. The weight of these words hit the young girl hard, causing her shoulders to slump as she stared at the ground. Trembling, she began to sob, her voice cracking as she admitted to herself and the others that she felt she hadn't done anything useful at all during the encounter. She wiped at her streaming eyes, struggling to find the words to express her gratitude. She had come there specifically to thank Wade for saving her, but the crushing sense of her own perceived inadequacy made the words feel hollow and difficult to speak. Seeing the distress he had inadvertently caused, he quickly tried to backtrack, his hands raised in a placating gesture. While Clay and the others watched the awkward scene unfold from a distance, Wade stammered out an apology, realizing he had pushed the conversation much further than intended. He gently placed a hand on her head, offering a comforting touch to still her trembling. He spoke softly, reassuring her that despite her fear, she had found the courage to act and do what she could, and that her effort was more than enough, causing her to finally release all her pent-up emotion in a loud, cathartic cry. Wade observes the trembling forms of his companions, noting how natural it is for them to panic when faced with the threat of death. Unlike them, he carries the weight of memories from a past life, while they are merely 15-year-old children experiencing true terror for the first time. He contemplates the source of his own calm, wondering if it is a matter of genetics or a lingering resilience from his previous existence, even though his former life as an office worker involved nothing as life-threatening as this. Turning to the young girl beside him, he suggests that she should avoid making fun of others in the future, as it would likely make her own life easier. She looks away, begrudgingly accepting his advice and offering a small word of thanks for his help. He then addresses the entire group, inquiring if anyone has sustained injuries or is feeling any strange side effects from the encounter. They all reassure him that they are miraculously unscathed, though the exhaustion is evident on their faces. With the immediate danger past, the group agrees to head their separate ways to find some much-needed rest, the quiet of the town square offering a stark contrast to the chaos they just escaped. Wade senses an awkward atmosphere beginning to brew between the two girls and decides it is the perfect moment to make a discreet exit, hoping to avoid being caught in the middle of any further social complications. The narrow streets of the town stretch out, empty and peaceful as the sun begins to set, marking the end of a harrowing day for the young trainees. Once they are alone, Drop turns to her companion with a playful yet probing question, asking if she knows if Wade has someone he likes. The girl is immediately flustered, stammering that her interest is purely observational and that she simply thought he was cool. She continues to struggle with her words, admitting she isn't sure how Wade feels, though she notes that he seems remarkably comfortable whenever he is around Drop. Drop leans in, her expression turning more serious as she demands to know if Wade actually said those words himself or if it was merely an assumption. The girl is left speechless, her face flushed as she tries to find a way to explain herself under the intense scrutiny. She remains silent, her head bowed as the interrogation continues. Drop presses her, pointing out that if Wade had truly said those things, she wouldn't be so visibly shaken. The accusation hangs in the air, that she simply made it all up to hide her own discomfort. As she hesitates, the sound of a sharp footstep echoes in the narrow corridor. Drop closes the distance between them, her voice dropping to a demanding tone as she insists on an immediate answer. The pressure mounts as Drop laments the change in her behavior, recalling a time when she was more compliant and obedient. Confused and hurt, she can only stammer out a weak response, wondering why such harsh words are being directed at her by someone she once followed. Standing her ground, Drop cuts through the excuses and asks the question directly. Is the real issue that she is bothered by Drop's own interest in Wade? A sudden, mocking realization dawns on Drop, and her face breaks into a wide, triumphant grin. She claps her hands together, delighting in the discovery that her peer harbors the same secret feelings for the boy, leaving the other girl frozen in embarrassed silence. The playful facade vanishes in an instant as Drop violently shoves her against the cold stone wall. The impact forces a cry of pain from her lips, and she is left pinned and trembling under Drop's sudden, aggressive outburst. Drop corners Ice in a secluded stone corridor, her face contorted with a mix of arrogance and fury. She lashes out verbally, dismissing the other girl as a pathetic excuse for a mage and asserting that Wade would never have feelings for someone so clumsy. She follows the verbal assault with a physical strike, the force of her anger sending the smaller girl reeling back against the cold masonry. Looming over her victim, she watches with cold satisfaction as tears begin to well in the girl's eyes and spill down her cheeks. The aggressor mocks the display of weakness, laughing at the idea that Wade might appear to play the hero and questioning if crying will bring anyone to the rescue in this lonely hallway. Watching with cold indifference, she sees the girl collapse against the wall, her frame shaking with the weight of her despair and the sting of the unprovoked attack. She leans in close, her tone shifting from outright rage to a chilling, calculated calm as she decides that the physical punishment has been sufficient and informs the girl of her new role. Staring down at the confused girl, she observes her struggle to process the sudden shift in demands through tear-blurred vision. She grabs the girl roughly, pulling her close to ensure her message is heard, and snarling at the bewildered expression while demanding total compliance. Standing tall over the cowering figure, she declares that from this moment forward, the girl will serve as her subordinate to ensure her pursuit of Wade succeeds at any cost. She smiles with a predatory glint in her eyes, forcing an acknowledgement of this new reality and making it clear that total obedience is the only option for her survival. She maintains her suffocating presence, the very air around them vibrating with the force of her malice as she looms over her target. Her cruelty finally breaks the girl's spirit, causing tears to spill over as she trembles in a state of total vulnerability. She clutches at her own clothing, a desperate and futile attempt to shield herself from the predatory gaze that has stripped away her every defense, leaving her sobbing and broken. Drop snatches a book from Ice's hands, her voice dripping with disdain as she declares reading to be a tedious waste of time. She offers to dispose of the boring object, ignoring the girl's silent plea for its return. Not content with just the book, she turns her mockery toward the girl's sewing, labeling it a depressing hobby. With a cruel flourish, she tosses the delicate handiwork onto the floor, promising to help her quit such nonsense. The rest of the group joins in, their voices a chorus of condemnation as they surround their target. They tell Ice she is always the one at fault, making it clear that their only reason for even acknowledging her existence is Drop's presence. This constant shadow of the Queen of Water Magic looms over her every moment, a suffocating weight that defines her social standing and her very sense of self. Tears finally spill over as the young girl stands alone, the weight of the bullying becoming unbearable. Her only thought is a desperate wish to be anywhere else, far from the cruelty of her peers. She grips her skirt tightly, her knuckles white with the intensity of her resolve. The need to escape, to find a place where Drop's influence cannot reach her, becomes her singular, driving focus. This resolve leads her to a carriage waiting in the town square. Her father watches with a heavy heart as she prepares to depart, offering words of caution about the rough path ahead and the dangers of slums. She assures him she will be fine, driven by the goal of becoming an adventurer in a place far removed from her tormentor. As the carriage pulls away, a rare smile touches her lips. For the first time in a long while, she feels a spark of genuine hope, looking forward to a future she can finally claim as her own. Upon arriving at her destination, the air itself feels different. She takes a deep breath, convinced that she can achieve anything now that the shadow of Drop has been left behind in her old life. However, that sense of peace is short-lived. As she takes in her new surroundings, a familiar voice calls out her name, shattering her illusion of safety. Nearby, Wade stands among the crowd, unaware of the newcomer's arrival or the path she is trying to escape. She stands frozen as Drop grasps her hands, a forced smile plastered on the other girl's face that doesn't reach her cold, calculating eyes. Stuttering in disbelief, she asks why her former tormentor is here, only to be met with a breezy explanation about a career change from traveling merchant to adventurer for the sake of self-defense. Drop laughs off the encounter as a wonderful coincidence, though her gaze suggests something far more predatory. The coincidence feels like a curse as they join the line of new recruits, where Drop immediately begins to assert her dominance over the other trainees, positioning herself as the natural leader of the group. Even in the shared living quarters, there is no escape. Drop brazenly claims the best bed and commands her to take the one directly opposite, ensuring constant surveillance and control over her every move. The bullying continues onto the training grounds, where Drop barks orders and shuts down any attempt at protest, demanding absolute obedience and a cessation of independent thought. While the girls are locked in their toxic dynamic, Wade pushes himself to the limit, his feet pounding against the dirt as he outpaces the rest of the class. His dedication is absolute, filling his days with grueling physical drills, focused study, and relentless sword practice. This excellence draws the ire of Drop, who fumes at the realization that she cannot claim the top spot as long as he is present. Frustrated by her inability to surpass the top student, she turns her mounting anger back toward her easiest target, her expression twisting into a mask of pure malice. She declares the formation of a new party with herself at the helm, informing her victim that she is the final member and must follow every command without question. However, a spark of defiance finally flickers as Ice refuses to follow her orders any longer, prompting a violent, threatening reaction from Drop. From the shadows of the corridor, Wade observes the tense exchange, his silent presence a stark contrast to the brewing conflict between the two girls. The young gravity mage reaches out with a steady gaze, identifying himself as Wade and offering a polite greeting. In response, she offers a shy smile, softly stating that her name is Ice. This meeting was the start of a profound change for her, as she watched him defy expectations, defeating a fire mage using only his supposedly inferior magic. The girl reflects on how his words resonated deeply within her, providing a source of courage and a new understanding that magical power isn't the sole measure of a person's worth. Under his influence, she found the strength to start believing in her own potential, even with her limited magical capabilities. This newfound confidence allowed her to finally break away from Drop's influence and stand on her own. Every small change, every bit of growth, she credits to the impact he had on her life. She watches him, a constant figure of resilience in the face of overwhelming challenges, and her admiration only grows. While she remains lost in these thoughts, the other girl interrupts, leaning in to present what she calls a fair offer, asking if it doesn't seem like a good deal. She continues her persuasion, insisting that she doesn't actually think he is anyone special, and urges the girl to just give her proposal a try. She continues her condescending offer, suggesting that if Wade proves to be uninteresting, she might graciously allow Ice to have him. However, Ice has reached her limit. With a sharp breath, she prepares to unleash her own magic, whispering the name of her technique. As the words leave her lips, a frost-laden magical circle erupts beneath her palm, the sudden chill biting into the air. The sudden surge of power catches the arrogant girl off guard, her confusion quickly turning to outrage as she demands to know what Ice thinks she's doing. Before she can retaliate, a blast of freezing energy strikes, sending her reeling back with a cry of shock. Struggling against the invisible weight, she finds herself pinned firmly against the stone wall, her limbs refusing to obey. Ice stands before her, explaining calmly that Wade's encouragement led her to explore new ways to manifest her power, moving beyond simple projectiles. With a cold, steady gaze, the young girl elaborates on the nature of her magic, noting how the extreme cold causes surfaces to bond instantly, effectively fusing her target to the environment. She demonstrates this terrifying application by forcing her former tormentor's shoulder against the floor, the ice spreading rapidly to anchor her in place. Desperation finally cracks the other girl's composure, her voice rising in a frantic plea for mercy. The frost creeps further, the sound of freezing moisture a sharp, rhythmic crackle as the bond between flesh, fabric, and stone becomes unbreakable. Now completely immobilized and reduced to tears, the once proud queen of water magic can only beg for the nightmare to end. Ice looks down at her with a chilling detachment, questioning how someone so powerful could find themselves in such a pathetic state, dismissing her pleas as a cruel joke. The intensity in her eyes is suffocating, a silent promise that the old hierarchy has been shattered. She leans in closer, her voice a low, dangerous whisper that leaves no room for misunderstanding. She finally vents the years of suppressed resentment, accusing her former friend of disregarding her entire existence and treating her like a mindless servant. Her voice trembles with a mix of fury and liberation as she demands to know if the plan was to keep her shackled forever or to simply take away the one person who truly saw her worth. She maintains her icy grip, ignoring the desperate pleas of the girl pinned beneath her. As the other girl begs for her to stop, she admits that the shrill, screechy voice has always grated on her ears, and she silences the protest with a cold, unwavering stare. Because of this moment of dominance, she begins to speak of the boy who changed her perspective, expressing a quiet joy in having met him. She reflects on his incredible nature, noting how he never gave up despite being saddled with magic others deemed horrible, eventually finding a way to grow stronger than anyone else. As she continues her monologue, she observes that his power is only destined to increase, a fact that seems to weigh heavily on the terrified girl trapped under her. In response to this inevitable growth, she demands a solemn promise. The other girl must stay away from him. She explains that her presence only serves to make things worse, and she fears that if someone so manipulative continues to interfere, it might eventually break his spirit. The demand is met with shivering compliance as the captive girl, frozen and in pain, agrees to keep her distance. She pleads to be released, complaining about the biting cold that is beginning to take its toll. Moments later, the trapped girl looks up with a flicker of something else in her eyes, prompting a suspicious glance from her captor. Standing over her, she points out a recurring tell, noting that a smile always accompanies the other girl's lies. With a sharp, discerning gaze, she realizes the truth. The promises were hollow, and the intent to deceive was there from the very beginning. Enraged by the betrayal, she unleashes a violent surge of frost, the air erupting in jagged shards of ice that completely envelop the area. Amidst the freezing chaos, the terrified girl screams out in a panic, swearing on her life that she is telling the truth and promising once more to stay far away from the boy. She watched in trembling silence as her tormentor stood amidst the frozen landscape, seemingly surprised by the intensity of her own magic. The ice wielder pondered her next move, wondering if her threats had been enough or if more was required to ensure total obedience. Turning her attention back to her captive, the girl offered a chillingly sweet smile. She addressed her victim with a mockingly affectionate tone, her eyes glinting with a dangerous, predatory light that signaled the end of any mercy. Leaning in until they were nearly nose to nose, she whispered a terrifying possibility. She mused about freezing her solid and shattering her into 1,000 pieces, noting with cold detachment that no one would ever discover her fate in this desolate place. The victim could only stare back in stunned silence, her mind reeling from the sheer malice directed at her. She was trapped, the cold seeping into her bones as the reality of her situation began to sink in with agonizing clarity. Desperation took hold as she began to plead for her life, her voice cracking with terror. She begged for forgiveness, but her cries were met only with another surge of freezing magic as the ice blow struck her again, chilling her to the core. Gasping for air, she desperately promised to stay away from Wade forever, hoping this vow would be enough to end the torture. However, the relentless assault continued, leaving her coughing and struggling to maintain consciousness under the weight of the frost. Encased in a layer of frost and trembling uncontrollably, she shrieked her refusal to die. Her tormentor watched with an icy gaze, suggesting that she should think very carefully about her next words if she valued her life at all. The interrogator then demanded to know exactly how she intended to prove her commitment to staying away from the boy. She loomed over the broken girl, waiting for a response that would satisfy her desire for absolute control. In a final hysterical outburst, the victim screamed that she would throw everything away. Her face was a mask of pure agony and terror as she reached her breaking point, willing to sacrifice her entire future to escape the cold. She finally surrendered completely, declaring her intention to quit the training school and abandon her dreams of becoming an adventurer. Satisfied that the threat to her interests had been neutralized, the ice wielder watched as her rival's spirit finally shattered. She is broken, huddled on the cold floor as the weight of her trauma crushes her spirit. The memories of terrifying monsters and the relentless chill of the magic used against her are too much to bear. She whimpers that she has had enough, her desire to be an adventurer completely extinguished by fear. Her tormentor watches with a cold, calculating gaze, placing a hand on the frosted surface as her eye narrows with clinical detachment. The thick, freezing mist that had served as a cage begins to swirl and thin, signaling the end of the interrogation. Gasping for air, the defeated girl looks up, her eyes wide with lingering terror as the oppressive atmosphere finally begins to lift. Standing tall amidst the dissipating frost, the dark-haired girl looms over her victim, a silent testament to the absolute power she has exerted. With a voice devoid of warmth, she commands the other to look at her, her expression remaining a mask of icy indifference. She points toward the exit, ordering the broken girl to leave immediately. She promises to gather the girl's belongings and have them delivered, making it clear that there is no place for her here anymore. The girl on the floor remains motionless for a moment, her mind seemingly blank as she stares into the void of her shattered future. Pushing herself up with trembling hands, she struggles to find her footing on the slick, wet stone. Her captor's voice cuts through the silence again, urging her to move faster. Finally, she begins to limp away, her posture defeated and her spirit crushed. As she retreats, the dark-haired girl tells her to stop with the hateful glares, claiming they are frightening, to which the departing girl can only offer a hollow agreement. She flees into the distance, her frantic footsteps the only sound echoing through the cold stone hallway. Watching her go, the girl remains motionless, staring into the void left by her departed rival. She clenches her fist, a surge of triumph swelling within her, as she realizes she no longer fears confrontation. This newfound resolve, she knows, is a gift from the boy who showed her what it means to be brave, and now that the obstacle is gone, her path is clear. A soft, unsettling giggle escapes her as she covers her mouth, savoring the taste of her psychological victory. Her eyes shimmer with an intense, unsettling light as she contemplates the boy's greatness, her gratitude twisting into something far deeper and more dangerous. She reflects on how truly incredible he is, her mind now entirely consumed by the impact he has had. The young man and his companion navigate the busy streets of the capital, their eyes searching for a specific storefront marked by the sign of a blacksmith. As they scan the crowd, he wonders where their friend could have gotten to until a familiar voice calls out from the shadows of a nearby shop, beckoning them over. Their friend emerges from the interior, clad from head to toe in gleaming, heavy plate armor that seems far too advanced for a simple trainee, beaming with pride as he asks for their opinion. He stares in disbelief at the transformation, while the girl beside him immediately calculates the staggering cost of such a set, questioning if it's even possible to return such an expensive purchase. Despite their initial shock, they both offer words of encouragement, realizing how much the new gear means to their comrade and deciding to play along with his excitement. With a satisfied grin, the armored youth leads them deeper into the establishment, eager to show them more of the treasures hidden within the shop's walls. They step through the threshold, greeted by the warm, metallic scent of a working forge and a boisterous welcome from the staff inside. A spirited woman behind the counter recognizes them instantly, her eyes lighting up as she offers a special discount to the rising stars of the academy, clearly impressed by their growing reputation. He takes the opportunity to present a rare find from their recent excursion, a poisoned blade taken from a fallen goblin, which the shopkeeper examines with professional curiosity, noting its unusual quality. He watches as Clay prepares to depart, the group agreeing to meet up later after selecting their own equipment from the shop's vast inventory. He watches his friend stride away, reflecting on the recent upheaval at the training school and noting that Drop has vanished from the ranks after her party began to crumble. He continues the conversation with the girl beside him, acknowledging that facing a monster like the Manticore changes one's perspective on survival, though she still finds it a pity that such a high-ranking student would quit. She looks down, a faint blush coloring her cheeks as she tentatively suggests that they choose her new weapon together, expressing how much that would mean to her. He readily agrees to the proposal, despite his own admission that he lacks a discerning eye for quality armaments, which brings a relieved smile to her face. He turns his full attention to the task at hand, deciding that they should prioritize finding the perfect tool for her first, his mind already beginning to weigh the options. They deliberate over the requirements, concluding that a weapon capable of channeling her magic would be ideal, something light with a significant reach to keep her at a safe distance. She finds the suggestion resonates deeply, offering a heartfelt thanks while he remains confident that this collaborative approach is the best path forward. He elaborates on the strategy, explaining that a slender blade like a foil or rapier would serve as the perfect conduit for her freezing spells, prioritizing the delivery of cold air over raw cutting power. However, the shopkeeper interjects with a sobering reality, noting that while such weapons are favored by nobility, an explorer's version must be forged from mystical orichalcum to withstand the rigors of a dungeon. He watched as the two young adventurers continued their discussion, with Ice acknowledging that while rapiers were typically reserved for formal duels, they suited her needs. Wade, still concerned about the fragility of such slender blades in a dungeon environment, suggested they prepare by purchasing two, just to be safe. He examined the pair of weapons closely, noting that they shared the same specifications and, more importantly, were reasonably priced. Even if they eventually needed to be replaced with something more durable, he felt they were a solid starting point for their journey. She offered a warm smile of gratitude, thanking him for his practical advice. However, her tactical mind was already moving forward, as she expressed a desire for a secondary weapon for her left hand, perhaps a parrying dagger that would allow her to defend herself without sacrificing her natural agility. He then pulled a small, sturdy mace from the rack, presenting it as another possibility. He pointed out that its simple design could be easily reinforced with magic, and its compact size wouldn't hinder her movements, though she noted it felt a bit heavy, suggesting it might serve better as a makeshift shield. She beamed with satisfaction as the decision was finalized. Seeing her happy, he confirmed with the shop staff that they would take both rapiers and the small mace, feeling a sense of relief that her equipment was finally settled. He then turned the tables, asking if she would return the favor and help him select his own weapon next. The request caught her off guard, her eyes widening in surprise before a joyful expression took hold. She agreed wholeheartedly, her face lighting up at the prospect of continuing their task together. The bond between them seemed to strengthen as they prepared to find the right tool for his unique magical abilities. Their moment was interrupted by the arrival of Clay, who approached them while clad in his own sturdy adventuring gear. He looked between the two of them, curious about their progress in the bustling shop. He inquired if they were also in the market for the kind of heavy, high-impact weaponry he favored. Wade shook his head, explaining that they were currently focused on his own needs, and that Ice was assisting him in the search. He admitted with a sheepish grin that he simply wasn't built for the massive, cumbersome equipment Clay used. His magic required something different, and he was content to leave the heavy lifting to others while he found a weapon that truly fit his style. He explains that his choice of weaponry isn't about physical stature, but rather the nature of his magic. Clay laughs, agreeing that Ice certainly isn't built for heavy lifting, which makes her choice of rapiers sensible. When Clay asks for clarification on his abilities, the young mage reveals he possesses gravity magic. He admits he needs to master it properly to avoid past mistakes. Hearing this, Ice steps forward, offering her knowledge of heavy weaponry to assist in his search. She insists on helping him look, her face flushed with a mix of determination and shyness as she commits to finding the perfect match for his unique power. Seeing her reaction, Clay can't help but tease his friend about how well-loved he is. The girl immediately retreats into a shell of embarrassment, stammering an apology while clutching her new gear. The boisterous warrior offers a quick apology, realizing he might have pushed the sensitive girl too far. He advises his friend not to make too many assumptions as they turn their attention back to the rows of steel. They scan the heavier options, from blunt hammers to thick metal clubs. While these offer the weight he craves, the seeker expresses a preference for something that retains a cutting edge. He examines a standard blade, noting its balance. Clay suggests that a two-handed sword or a claymore might be a better fit for someone looking to maximize impact, but the youth still finds the standard options lacking the necessary heft. His eyes then fall upon a monstrous relic leaning in a dusty corner, a massive, jagged slab of iron that dwarfs every other weapon in the shop. It is a crude, heavy thing, seemingly impossible for a normal human to wield. A vision flashes through his mind of himself leaping into the air, bringing that colossal weight down upon a cowering beast with world-shaking force. He stands mesmerized by the sheer scale of the iron slab, the gears in his head turning as he considers if his gravity magic is the key to taming such a beastly weapon. He stands before the massive slab, his eyes wide with curiosity as the shopkeeper approaches. She questions the rumors she's heard, asking if it's true that he seeks the heaviest weapon possible. As they stand beside the towering piece of iron, she explains its unusual history, noting it was forged by a former trainee who found his true calling in the forge rather than on the battlefield. Wade listens intently, eventually explaining that his unique magic allows him to manipulate the weight of objects, making even this behemoth manageable. She gestures toward the slab, admitting that its sheer size has made it a permanent fixture in her shop, gathering dust for years because no one could possibly wield it. Her expression turns serious as she speaks of her professional pride, emphasizing that she takes her role seriously and only sells weapons that are appropriate for a trainee's actual abilities. Turning back to him, she places a hand on his shoulder and challenges him directly, admitting she still hasn't determined what weapon suits him best and hoping he can demonstrate his true potential. She points toward the massive iron slab, stating that the test is simple. If he can lift and swing the blunt, unsharpened mass, she will have her answer. With a confident smirk, she makes a bold offer, promising to give him the weapon for free if he can actually handle it. The young trainee's face lights up with pure, unadulterated joy at the prospect, his eyes sparkling as he realizes the opportunity before him. Behind him, his companions watch with a mix of amusement and disbelief, while the shopkeeper laughs, noting how his cool facade has completely vanished into a childish grin. He steps forward and reaches for the rough surface of the iron, focusing his energy as he activates his magic to decrease the crushing weight of the slab. With a sudden, powerful movement, he hoists the massive weapon into the air with a single hand and performs a wide, sweeping swing that leaves the shopkeeper speechless. She can only laugh in shock, admitting that while she expected him to try and lift it, she never imagined he would be able to swing it with such ease. He beams with pride as the shopkeeper officially hands over the massive blade, her laughter echoing through the forge as she recalls how easily he lifted it with one hand. Nearby, his companion watches with a mix of surprise and amusement, noting that the young warrior is far more expressive and emotional than the stoic image he had previously held of him. Because he knows the limitations of such a gargantuan weapon, he explains that he needs something for tight spaces where swinging the iron slab would be impossible. After a moment of searching, his eyes settle on a pair of sturdy, segmented metal gauntlets, deciding these will be the perfect complement to his arsenal. With the new equipment secured, he clenches his fist in a surge of adrenaline, declaring himself fully prepared for the challenges ahead. The shopkeeper smiles warmly at his enthusiasm, accepting his sincere thanks as he prepares to depart the workshop. As the group gathers their belongings, the young woman with the long dark hair inquires about their next move, noticing that her companions have finished their business. The other boy adjusts his own armor, satisfied with his purchase, while the protagonist confirms he now has the 3 essential items he came for. In response to the shopkeeper's tally, she steps forward to handle the finances, suggesting they split the cost evenly between them. They discuss the trade-in value of a poison goblin knife they acquired, negotiating a fair deduction from the final price of their new gear. While they finalize the transaction, he casually mentions the goblin they managed to defeat through their combined efforts, but the comment causes her to recoil in sudden, flustered denial. She frantically waves her hands, her face flushing as she begs him not to bring up the incident or give her credit she feels she doesn't deserve. Despite his attempts to acknowledge her support, she remains adamant, insisting that he was the one who truly conquered the depths of the dungeon. She points out that from the 3rd floor onwards, he had handled every threat entirely on his own, leaving her in awe of his rapid growth. The exchange leaves a lingering tension in the air, which their companion observes with a knowing, slightly mischievous glint in his eyes. He watches the two of them bicker over the details of their victory, sensing a shift in the dynamic between the swordsman and the girl. Suddenly, the boy interrupts their back and forth by jokingly labeling them a pair of lovers, a comment that sends both of them into a state of absolute shock. Their faces turn bright red as they shout in unison, the mere suggestion of a romantic connection catching them completely off guard. Amused by the spectacle, the shopkeeper watches them leave with a chuckle, wishing them luck on their journey. She observes the girl's flustered state and thinks to herself that the young lady certainly has her work cut out for her, trying to keep such a headstrong young man under control. She clenches her jaw, her long dark hair framing a face twisted in a mix of embarrassment and irritation as she processes the previous teasing. He turns back with a playful glint in his eye, suggesting that if she remains unsatisfied with the current situation, they should simply go on a date together, adding with a smirk that she could even pick up the tab. He quickly laughs it off as a mere joke, but the suggestion hits her like a physical blow, leaving her mind reeling as the word date echoes with staggering force. She begins to sway, her knees buckling under the weight of her overwhelming bashfulness as the boys rush forward in a panic to catch her. Her eyes are wide and unfocused, her expression one of total sensory overload as the playful prodding finally pushes her far beyond her emotional. Deep within the dungeon, Wade prepares for the next wave of monsters. He expertly manipulates the weight of his equipment, shifting between weight up and weight down to optimize his movements for the coming clash. With a fierce grin, he warns the snarling beasts to prepare to be crushed. He lunges forward with explosive speed. Utilizing a weight straight strike, he tears through the pack of monsters, his fist landing with the force of a falling boulder. He quickly identifies an opening in their ranks and moves to exploit it. He roars as the battle intensifies, his strikes landing with bone-shattering precision. Amidst the chaos, a realization dawns on him. While he draws the initial attention and acts as the vanguard, he is no longer fighting this battle alone. The coordination of the team pays off instantly. Ice unleashes a freezing blast known as Ice Blow to immobilize the remaining creatures, while Clay slams his massive hammer down with a quake that shatters the very ground beneath their feet. Silence returns to the cavern as the last of the enemies fall. Ice smiles, satisfied that their combined efforts made the encounter look easy, while Wade raises his hands in a celebratory cheer of victory. They gather to discuss the fight, the tension of combat replaced by a sense of accomplishment. Ice feels refreshed by how well the strategy worked, and Wade is quick to credit her hard work. Clay admits he was surprised by the effectiveness of their formation, particularly Wade's opening gambit, while Wade notes that his new gauntlet performed perfectly. The adrenaline fades, replaced by a creeping fatigue. Wade notices his concentration beginning to wane and suggests it's time to head back to the surface. Ice is taken aback, realizing just how long they have been diving. A glance at their magical timepiece confirms her suspicion. The ornate device shows that they have been deep within the dungeon for a significant amount of time, far longer than they had initially realized. As they trek back through the winding tunnels, Clay mentions that while some ambitious divers stay for days to grind for silver rank, they should prioritize a safe exit for now. Wade remains quiet, his eyes fixed on the strange, intentional-looking designs carved into the cave walls. Turning to his companion, Clay asks Wade if he hails from a wealthy family, perhaps noticing the quality of his gear or his unusual level of skill. The question catches Wade completely off guard, leaving him momentarily speechless as he considers how to respond. He listens as his companion reveals a surprising truth. He is the third son of a baron. The revelation leaves him and the young girl stunned, though the noble boy quickly tries to dismiss the weight of his title as something trivial. As they continue, he reflects on the sheer scale of the world's social divide, marveling at how a former near-slave like himself is now walking alongside nobility in this fantasy-like reality. The young noble admits that while his status is significant, he is still far removed from the legendary figures who originally bestowed magic upon their world. Sensing his confusion, the dark-haired girl steps in to explain the intricacies of the peerage, noting that barons occupy the lowest rung of the hereditary noble ladder. She describes the higher ranks, where earls serve as powerful vassals, standing just below the royal families who have ruled for generations. In contrast, she explains that barons are barely positioned above knights, whose titles are often temporary rewards for service rather than permanent legacies. Despite the lesson in hierarchy, the boy of noble birth turns to him with an unexpected proposal, asking if he would take on the role of their party leader. He insists that his friend should take charge, claiming that his confidence was the very reason they joined forces in the first place. As the trio finally emerges from the dark depths of the cave, the young trainee gazes toward the horizon, wondering what his life will hold once their time as students comes to an end. He considers the three distinct paths laid out for those who seek the life of an adventurer, starting with the sword adventurer. This role is essentially that of a mercenary, where one's job involves the grim reality of war, fighting bandits, and protecting villages, a path paved with conflict. He then looks to the second option, the archer adventurer, which offers a more straightforward existence. This path focuses on the hunt, whether it be gathering medicinal herbs as an apprentice or submitting monster carcasses to the guild in good condition. Finally, he contemplates the third path, the torch adventurer, which is described as the strictest dream. This is the path of the explorer, where survival and the discovery of treasure in deep dungeons are prioritized over the need to kill people or monsters. As he holds a small, inscribed wooden tag in his hand, the weight of these choices hangs over him while he sits before a simple meal. He is pulled from his quiet contemplation by his companion, who asks if he intends to eat, warning him that their instructor will be furious if he neglects his sustenance. She offers a bright, encouraging smile, declaring that she has decided to simply follow his lead regardless of which path he chooses. He is visibly surprised by her declaration, wondering if she didn't come to the training camp with her own specific goals or ambitions to achieve. She looks away with a hint of displeasure, admitting that she actually ran away from her parents' house because she was unhappy there, seeking an escape rather than a specific career. He realizes that their situations are remarkably similar, as he also fled his home for reasons he can't quite articulate, leaving him uncertain about what he will do once this temporary training period ends. In a life long forgotten, he was once a proper businessman in a bustling modern city, a role he took on not out of desire, but simply to survive and avoid hunger, picking a job at random just to get by. He reflects on the end of his previous existence, a life consumed by the relentless grind of corporate work that left him with no family to mourn him and no time to truly rest before his body finally gave out. He then shifts his focus back to the present moment, turning the conversation toward Clay to ask what the young man intends to do once their time at the training camp concludes. The young man offers a bright, genuine smile in return, confessing that his heart has always been set on the noble goal of becoming a hero. He elaborates on this ambition, declaring his intent to become a torch adventurer and eagerly inviting his friend to join him if he hasn't yet decided on a path. In response to his invitation, she interjects sharply, scolding their companion for trying to impose his own desires on someone else's future. Seeing her reaction, he quickly backs down with a sheepish apology, admitting that the suggestion was a spur-of-the-moment thought and that he had actually planned to invite her along as well. As he apologizes, the other boy watches her smile, finding it strange how much she seems to respect him despite their group having been formed so spontaneously. He lets out a long, thoughtful hum, focusing on his food as he weighs the different futures laid out before him in silence. While he eats, she continues to support his autonomy, insisting that it is best for him to live exactly as he pleases, even as their friend notices the visible conflict in his expression. Agreeing with her, he eventually concludes that before he can commit to any specific path, he must first find something in this new world that he truly loves. He sits at the table, reflecting on how much he's grown physically, noting that just months ago he was likely smaller than Ice. Clay chuckles, teasing him for worrying about such trivial, immature things while they eat. Hearing this, Ice reacts with genuine shock, unable to believe that her friend could have ever been so small. The tavern around them hums with the quiet energy of other patrons. Outside, the sturdy stone and wood building stands silent under the evening sky, a sanctuary for the young trainees. Their journey over the last 6 months flashes by. The damp tunnels of the dungeon, the fierce battles against bandits, and the grueling tasks of collecting monster trophies. They had pushed themselves to reach the 4th floor, honing their magic and combat skills until they were barely recognizable from the novices they once were. Back at the table, the weight of their progress hangs in the air as they finish their meal. Clenching his fists, the young man realizes that tomorrow's exam is the final hurdle. It represents their graduation, a definitive end to this chapter of their lives, regardless of how they feel about it. The mood shifts as Clay confesses that he can't help but feel a bit lonely now that the end is near. Ice offers a gentle smile, reminding them that while things are changing, it isn't a final goodbye. Clay then turns the conversation toward the future, asking if his friend has finally settled on a career path. Wade leans back, looking up as he considers the past half year. He had experimented with the sword, the bow, and the role of a torchbearer, finding joy in every single one of them. This very enjoyment is his struggle, as he admits with a pained expression that he loved everything so much he simply cannot decide. Clay bursts into laughter at the absurdity of the situation, suggesting that there's no need to rush into a single specialty just yet. Ice chimes in with a startling observation. Her friend has actually met the requirements for every single adventurer certificate. She suggests that he could potentially take the exams for the sword, the bow, and the torch all at once, a feat that would be truly extraordinary. He stares at the faint glow in his palm, the weight of his potential finally sinking in. Clay watches him with a grin, remarking that it wouldn't be surprising at all if someone like him managed to awaken an entirely new magic once they reach the 5th floor. With the sound of their cleaning finished, the group prepares to head home for the last time as trainees. Clay suggests they disband for the night, acknowledging that this is the final time they will say their goodbyes before their lives change forever. They exchange final farewells in the dim light of the hallway, promising to see each other the following morning for the big day. Later, the young man finds himself drawn back to the empty training grounds. He stands alone before the massive wooden gates, the silence of the arena a stark contrast to the months of grueling practice he endured within these walls. His solitude is interrupted when a familiar figure approaches. Ice stands nearby, her expression soft as she calls out his name, sensing his contemplative mood. He turns to greet her, surprised to see her out so late. She explains that she saw him heading outside and couldn't help but follow, wondering if he'd come back to the arena to reminisce about their journey, just as she had. She steps closer, her gaze lingering on the training equipment before asking if he'd like to sit and talk for a while. They find a spot to rest, and the conversation turns to their preparations. He mentions that he's already packed his things, though it wasn't much, just his weapons and a few changes of clothes. It's a far cry from when he first arrived, owning nothing but the tattered rags on his back. A light-hearted moment breaks the tension as he jokingly reminds her that she isn't supposed to step foot into the boys' dormitory. She laughs, the sound echoing softly in the quiet night. Under a vast, shimmering canopy of stars, they look toward the horizon, realizing that from tomorrow onward, they will finally be recognized as true adventurers. While there's a sense of nostalgia for the memories they've made, he admits he is truly looking forward to the future. She agrees, but then turns to him with a softer expression, asking if he feels any lingering anxiety about the path ahead. He reaches out, his hand coming to rest gently on her head in a comforting gesture. He speaks softly, admitting his own slight worries but encouraging her not to overthink things, confident that everything will work out in the end. His touch leaves her wide-eyed and stammering, her face flushing as she processes the unexpected affection. Seeing her reaction, Wade quickly pulls back and offers a sheepish apology, fearing he might have overstepped, but she quickly reassures him that she didn't mind at all, even shyly suggesting that he can continue if he wishes. She allows him to resume the gentle patting, her expression thoughtful as they sit together in the quiet night. He questions her again about her desire to form a party with him, reminding her that they're still just trainees and expressing his concern that he might inadvertently hold her back from her own potential. He offers a warm, genuine smile as he accepts her resolve, finding her lack of modesty refreshing. She looks up at him, her eyes shimmering with a mix of gratitude and a quiet, growing determination. She is asked what her own dreams for the future are as he shifts the conversation. He notes that their friend Clay has already set his sights on becoming a hero, and he wonders if she has a similar path in mind. He sees her lean in slightly, a playful yet mysterious glint in her eyes as she declares her dream to be a secret for now. She offers a deal. If he performs well on the upcoming graduation exam, she will reveal it to him, and he laughs softly, agreeing that they both have a lot of hard work ahead of them. She sees him look away, reflecting on how much everyone seemed to enjoy their on-the-job training. He admits to her that while Clay and she seem to have clear goals, he is still searching for what it is he truly wants to achieve in this world. He stands up and turns toward the horizon, noting that the final exam is only a day away. Behind him, she offers a quiet word of thanks, feeling a renewed sense of courage from their shared moment of vulnerability. He continues, suggesting that they shouldn't let their anxieties keep them awake. He emphasizes the importance of a good night's rest to ensure they are both prepared for the challenges of the following day, and she nods in agreement. He is met with a soft, lingering smile as they prepare to part for the night. Her voice is a gentle murmur as she wishes Wade a good night, the bond between them strengthened by the quiet honesty of their conversation. She had shared a touching moment with him, a memory from the vibrant days of their youth when inexperience still clouded their path. Yet, beneath the sentiment lay a sobering truth they had perhaps overlooked. The life of an adventurer is forged in inherent danger, and the simple days of their adolescence were quickly fading into the past. This quiet reflection is shattered by the booming voice of their instructor, who declares that the time for peace has passed. With a commanding shout, he announces the official start of their graduation exam, signaling that their comfortable reality is about to change forever. As his words echo through the hall, the young trainees stand ready, their faces set with grim resolve. Wade, Clay, and Ice are no longer just students. They're on the precipice of a new, perilous reality as their peaceful days finally come. A metal cage descends slowly into the dark, jagged depths of a cavern, marking the start of a new trial. As the cage settles, a torch is struck, its flickering light revealing the trio at the threshold of the dungeon's deeper levels. He leads the way, his expression focused as he rallies his companions, Ice and Clay, declaring their objective to reach the 5th floor and urging them forward. They review the mission parameters, reach the 5th floor, and return safely to earn their copper torches. With a shared understanding, they plunge into the narrow, winding tunnels. The silence of the cave is soon shattered as a pack of snarling monsters ambushes them, forcing the group into a frantic defensive formation. After clearing the initial threat, they reach the 4th floor, where he advises a more cautious approach as the atmosphere grows increasingly heavy, reminding them to stay alert. Suddenly, he activates his magic, the words "wait up," echoing as he launches himself into the air with unnatural force to strike down a looming foe. He follows up with a devastating, weighted uppercut that sends a massive creature reeling, before turning to his friends and insisting on handling the remaining pack himself to test his limits. With a series of heavy, calculated body blows, he systematically dismantles the monsters, leaving them broken in the dust as he casually bids them farewell. His momentum doesn't falter as he delivers a final, crushing weighted straight to a lingering beast, his confidence radiating in the dim light. He exhales a breath of relief, sheathing his weapon as he apologizes to his companion for hogging all the action. Clay, leaning on his large hammer, simply shrugs it off, glad for the easy pace and the chance to take it slow. Turning to the young woman, he offers a word of thanks as she provides support. She responds with a quiet, encouraging word, acknowledging his hard work and the successful completion of their recent skirmish. As they stand amidst the fallen monsters, his companions marvel at his seemingly bottomless well of strength. They realize that he has been carrying the brunt of the combat effortlessly, leaving them with plenty of energy in reserve. He pauses to gauge their thoughts, questioning if wandering the 4th floor is truly enough. He suggests that the 5th floor, or perhaps even deeper, might be more appropriate for their current momentum, noting that they have been very cautious so far. His friend, resting his heavy hammer on his shoulder, places the decision squarely on his shoulders. He explains that, as their leader, It is up to him to decide if they have made the right call, and they will follow his lead without hesitation. The young woman nods in firm agreement, confirming her trust. The weight of their trust brings a small, genuine smile to his face, a moment of quiet pride in the bond they formed and the responsibility he now carries. He reasons that while they could go further, there is little benefit to overextending themselves as mere trainees. He reminds them of their earlier agreement to reach the 5th floor and then make a safe return, prioritizing their objective over unnecessary risks. The group shares a light-hearted moment, laughing at his practical and clear-headed outlook. He maintains that risking one's life for mere pride is a fool's errand, especially when it would be more profitable to focus on guild quests rather than reckless bravado. Their path soon brings them to a dark opening in the cavern wall, where a set of stone stairs leads further into the depths of the 5th floor, marked by ominous skulls on nearby pillars. One by one, they begin the descent, leaving the safety of the upper levels behind as they step into the unknown challenges of the next floor, with him leading the way. He leads his companions deeper into the jagged, limestone throat of the cavern, their footsteps echoing against the damp, silent walls. Having reached their goal, he issues a calm command to retreat, noting that this level of the dungeon offered little variation from the floors they had already conquered. Their path is suddenly blocked by another group, led by a familiar, spiky-haired figure who reacts with visible shock and irritation at the sight of them. He immediately lashes out, accusing them of tailing his party, while Wade's companions look on with genuine confusion at the baseless outburst. One of Frayne's own allies attempts to restrain him, urging him to stop his irrational behavior, but the hot-headed youth only grows more indignant. Seeing the commotion, Wade calmly questions what Frayne is trying to accomplish, as the rival is physically held back by his frustrated teammates. Despite the tension, one of the onlookers observes that Wade is not the type of person to engage in such petty stalking, a sentiment that seems to only further incense the prideful Frayne. The two parties stand at an impasse in the narrow tunnel, with Wade's group maintaining a stoic silence while Frayne's companions try to de-escalate the situation. He roars for his teammate to shut up, refusing to listen to reason as his face contorts with a mixture of embarrassment and rage. Unfazed by the drama, Wade simply states his lack of interest in the conflict and asks to pass, prompting a sincere apology from Frayne's more level-headed ally. He stands his ground as Frayne continues his verbal assault, questioning why the group is even there. The arrogant boy mocks the idea of them reaching the 5th floor, claiming it's only a requirement for the Copper Torch badge and that they are likely just scared. Wade remains unruffled, noting that his rival seems to have a lot of idiots in his party, which only agitates the other boy further. Ignoring the insults, the young man watches as Frayne dismissively waves them off, insisting that they should just leave since they are already heading back. The rival makes it clear he has no desire to be friendly or familiar with someone he deems beneath him. As they walk away, the young man with the messy hair grumbles about the rude attitude they just encountered, wondering aloud how someone so ill-mannered could even become an adventurer. Moments later, the trio continues their trek through the rocky cavern, the distance between them and the other party growing as they head toward the exit. They confirm their next steps, acknowledging their status as Copper Torch adventurers and agreeing that it is time to conclude their business on this floor and return to the surface. While he admits a lingering sense of unease regarding those they left behind, he tries to put it out of his mind until a blood-curdling scream suddenly rips through the silence of the dungeon. The sound stops him in his tracks, his eyes narrowing as he immediately recognizes the direction of the cry. Realizing Frayne and the others are in trouble, he instantly declares a change of plans. He instructs his companions that they must go back and check on the other group, promising that they will provide backup if the others are in genuine danger. His teammates, sensing the gravity of the situation, quickly fall in line with his decision. With a burst of speed, he leads the charge back through the tunnel, his eyes scanning the darkness until he spots the source of the commotion just ahead. Upon reaching the scene, they are met with a nightmare. A massive chimera, a horrific fusion of lion, goat, and serpent, is looming over the terrified and battered party. The beast looms over the terrified group as Wade and his companions finally arrive on the scene. Ice stares in disbelief, realizing they are facing one of the dungeon's legendary bosses. Despite the overwhelming presence of the creature, Wade calls out to Frayne, announcing their arrival to help. Frayne, though battered, can't help but wonder if they truly have what it takes to survive this encounter. They are met with a gruff response from the instructor, who scolds them for their recklessness even as he accepts their support. He immediately takes command, ordering the group to prioritize the rescue of AI while he keeps the monster at bay. With a focused glare, he channels his energy, unleashing a searing fire arrow to create an opening. He watches closely as the chimera reacts with surprising agility, its movements defying its massive, multi-headed physique. The instructor warns the others that the creature's speed is unnatural, urging them to stay alert. Wade, sensing the shift in the battle's rhythm, prepares to intervene with his own unique brand of magic, ignoring the instructor's command to wait for orders. He activates a hidden power, causing several dense, black spheres to manifest and orbit around him. The air grows heavy with the sudden surge of magical energy, drawing the attention of everyone on the battlefield. As the chimera lets out a deafening roar, Wade focuses his resolve, ready to test his new strength against the monstrosity. He stands firm, wielding a massive, spiked mace that pulses with the same dark energy as the spheres. With his companions and the wounded looking on in awe, he stares down the three-headed beast, his expression one of calm, unwavering determination. The time for training is over. The real fight has begun. Wade stands before the chimera, his grip tightening on his blade as the true fight for survival begins. He is eager to test the true power of his weapon against such a formidable foe. He swings the massive blade in a wide arc, his eyes fixed on the beast with unwavering focus. The young warrior watches as the lion head of the chimera lets out a deafening roar, its breath visible in the cold air of the dungeon. He braces himself as the creature lunges forward with terrifying speed, while the instructor and the other trainees watch from the sidelines, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and disbelief. The swordsman nimbly avoids the initial pounce, taunting the monster for its impatience as he prepares his next move. He brings his sword down in a powerful strike, the heavy blade biting into the chimera's flank with a dull thud. He clicks his tongue in frustration as the beast recoils, realizing that the strike hadn't gone deep enough to be decisive. He rests the heavy weapon on his shoulder and turns to his comrades, his voice ringing out with newfound authority. He rallies those still able to move, commanding them to gather around and prepare for a coordinated strike the very moment the beast is brought down. His call is met with a chorus of affirmation from the instructor and the remaining trainees. Despite their exhaustion and the instructor's initial hesitation, they resolve to follow his lead and commit to the plan. He turns his attention back to the snarling chimera, which seems momentarily confused by his defiance. With a simple, cold greeting, he stares the beast down, ready for the next exchange. He stands his ground, his eyes locked on the massive beast before them. He warns his companions not to look away, insisting they must wait for the chimera's demeanor to shift before they strike. Frayne, standing just behind him, acknowledges the plan with a grim nod, ready to move the moment the opening appears. The light-haired mage points urgently toward the creature's back, noting that the goat head is beginning to chant or flap its mouth in an unnatural way. Wade's expression hardens as he identifies the threat as black magic, a heretical and dangerous power wielded by non-human entities. Realizing the gravity of the situation, he commands Frayne and the others to focus all their efforts on the goat head to stop the spell before it can be unleashed. He unleashes a fire arrow, a searing bolt of magical energy that streaks toward the chimera. As the beast recoils from the flames, Wade and the girl known as Ice seize the moment to charge forward, their weapons drawn and ready to capitalize on the distraction. The beast's lion head snaps forward with terrifying speed, its massive jaws clamping down hard on Wade's shoulder. Seeing him in peril, Ice doesn't hesitate, rushing toward the monster with her staff raised high. She channels her power into a desperate ice blow, striking the creature with a burst of freezing energy. The sudden chill forces the lion head to release its grip, giving Wade a momentary reprieve from the crushing pressure of its teeth. The serpent tail lashes out in a blur of motion, its fangs sinking deep into the girl's shoulder just as she lands her blow. She cries out in pain as the venomous tail coils around her, the predator's eyes gleaming with cold malice. The sturdy trainee slams his heavy weapon into the stone floor, shouting the command for his quake magic. The ground erupts in a violent shockwave, staggering the chimera and forcing it to loosen its hold on its victims. He lunges forward despite his own injuries, his blade cutting through the air as he tries to drive the beast back. His heart sinks as he looks over to see Ice collapsed on the ground, and he screams her name in a voice thick with panic and concern. She lies trembling on the cold stone, her hand clutching the bloody wound on her shoulder where the serpent struck. Looking up at Wade with pained eyes, she tries to force a reassuring smile, whispering that she is fine even as her strength begins to fail her. He kneels beside her, his face contorted with desperation as he begs Clay to find a way to stop the bleeding. He tells her to stop talking, his voice cracking with emotion, while she only smiles weakly and tells him not to worry about her, her selflessness shining through even in her darkest hour. She lies still as the armored youth prepares to administer an antidote, his hands moving with urgent precision to counteract the serpent's venom. Seeing the boy's readiness, the dark-haired trainee instructs him to move her to the safety of the cavern's edge, where she can rest more comfortably while the battle continues. As the armored boy carries her away, the dark-haired youth turns his attention back to the looming threat, declaring that he and the fire wielder will hold the beast at bay. Despite her precarious state, she manages a weak, trembling smile and whispers his name, her eyes reflecting a mix of pain and gratitude for his protection. He responds with a gentle reassurance, telling her there is no need for a facade of strength after her vital role in neutralizing the serpent's head. With his resolve hardened, he draws his twin blades and channels his magic, coating the steel in a lethal layer of frost through his ice blow technique. While the armored boy retreats to a safe distance with the wounded girl in his arms, the swordsman stands his ground against the multi-headed monstrosity. The battle resumes in earnest as the fire wielder launches a searing blast, mocking the other's concern while the swordsman calculates his next move amidst the chaos. Together, the two rivals face the remaining heads of the chimera, their contrasting styles forming a desperate front against the creature's predatory gaze. They quickly coordinate their assault, with the fire wielder promising to intercept any direct lunges so the swordsman can deliver a decisive blow with his frozen rapiers. He watches as his companion prepares a surreptitious strike. Frayne channels his mana, frustrated that his reputation is built solely on his magical prowess, and decides to slip a fireball into the fray when the beast is distracted. While the plan takes shape, the two of them stand their ground within the jagged confines of the cavern. Below them, the chimera's lion head lets out a low, predatory snarl, its eyes locked on its prey. A sudden realization strikes. Animal eyes are masters of motion, tracking every twitch with lethal precision, yet they struggle to distinguish a target that remains perfectly still against the background. Testing this theory, the young warrior plants his feet and becomes a statue, staring down the massive beast. The chimera pauses, its predatory instincts momentarily confused by the lack of movement. The stalemate breaks as the creature finally lunges with a thunderous roar. He braces himself, shouting a warning as the massive paws tear into the earth where he stood moments before. Using the beast's momentum against it, he leaps high into the air, his heavy blade raised for a crushing overhead strike. The chimera looks up in shock, its eyes widening as it realizes the trap. It tries to adjust, but the momentum of its own charge leaves it vulnerable for a split second. However, the beast is faster than anticipated, and a brutal counterblow sends him reeling. Frayne screams his name in terror as the impact echoes through the chamber. He is sent tumbling through the air, the breath driven from his lungs in a spray of grit and blood. He crashes into the stone floor, his body limp from the sheer power of the monster's strike. His comrade, seeing him down, steps forward with a hand glowing with the heat of a fire arrow. Frayne bellows for him to get back up, promising to hold the line and buy the precious seconds needed for recovery. He lies broken on the cold stone, blood staining the ground beneath him as his companions rush to his side. Frayne grips his shoulder, his face a mask of grim determination, while the girl beside them watches in silent terror, her eyes wide at the sight of his injuries. Despite the crushing weight of his wounds, he begins to stir, a faint magical resonance shimmering in the air above his head. He forces his trembling limbs to move, pushing himself up into a kneeling position as the beast watches from the shadows of the cavern. He is hauled to his feet by his companion, who refuses to let him fall and desperately urges him to keep moving. Across the jagged floor of the chamber, the looming threat of the chimera remains, but he can only manage a raspy whisper of gratitude as he finds his footing. His companion pulls back, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and mounting anger as he looks at his friend. He demands to know if the blow to the head has driven him mad, unable to comprehend why a smile is forming on a face so battered and bloodied. He raises a gauntlet hand to his mouth, feeling the vibration of his own mirth as the realization finally dawns on him. He is indeed laughing, a genuine, dark chuckle escaping his lips as he acknowledges his own bizarre reaction to the carnage. Within the depths of his mind, he questions this sudden surge of macabre joy, wondering why he feels such a thrill while enduring this gut-wrenching agony. The pain is absolute and the suffering is real, yet it serves only to fuel a fire he didn't know he possessed. A predatory glint ignites in his eyes as the truth finally becomes clear to him. This, the danger, the blood, the sheer proximity to death, is what he has been searching for all along, and in this moment of peak suffering, his true nature finally awakens. Wade stands amidst the remnants of his journey, reflecting on the path he has walked. For a long time, he questioned his future and what truly drove him, but after countless adventures and grueling battles, the answer has finally become clear. He looks back at his companions, remembering a time when he believed everyone followed the same standard path, equipped with nothing more than swords, bows, and torches. He acknowledges that while he wasn't entirely wrong about the basics, he had to learn not to rush his own growth. Gripping his massive, cloth-wrapped blade, he recalls the advice to find his own way in his own time. His heart hammers against his ribs as he stares down the monstrous chimera. He realizes that he has always craved these lethal, high-stakes confrontations. They're the only moments that make him feel truly alive. He accepts that as long as there is a genuine exchange of lives on the line, he is at peace. This proximity to death is not a burden, but the very thing he loves most about his existence. He stares at the beast, wondering how he can possibly secure a victory when his current physical condition prevents him from using his standard fighting style. His internal struggle is interrupted by Frayne and the other trainee, who ask if he is all right. He quickly masks his doubt, insisting that he feels fine. He experiences a sudden moment of profound clarity amidst the chaos. He understands now that he must not allow himself to be restricted by the stereotypes or conventional methods that others expect of him. He sees Frayne's expression sour as the other boy senses a change in the atmosphere, clicking his tongue in frustration. Despite the tension, Wade finds a grim satisfaction in his new resolve, deciding to embrace this unconventional approach. He is snapped back to the present when the other trainee frantically asks for orders, but he cuts through the panic. Declaring that the time for waiting is over, he steps forward to take the lead against the chimera. He launches himself into the air with a sudden burst of speed. By channeling his gravity magic, he makes his body lighter than the air itself, defying weight as he begins his daring assault. He hung suspended from the cavern's ceiling, a wild grin spreading across his face as he declared his intent to finally take the fight to the monster. From his inverted vantage point, the entire battlefield was laid bare. Below, the massive chimera prowled the floor, while the instructor and the other trainees watched in stunned silence from the safety of the tunnel entrance. Reaching out toward the ground far below, he focused his will on the heavy blade he had discarded, the air around his hand beginning to shimmer with magical energy. As he plummeted downward, defying the natural order of the world, his eyes remained locked on his target, the wind whistling past his ears. The beast looked up in confusion, sensing a sudden shift in the atmosphere as the massive sword embedded in the earth began to vibrate violently under the influence of his magic. It barely had time to react before the force of his descent, and the resonating power of the blade created a localized shockwave, kicking up dust and debris around the creature's paws. The creature's predatory eyes widened in genuine shock as a complex magical seal manifested in the air, signaling that the young human's gambit was only just beginning. Seizing the moment of the monster's hesitation, he reclaimed his weapon in a fluid motion, while nearby, his rival prepared to join the fray. They moved in tandem, a sudden and unspoken understanding passing between them. He called out to his companion, who responded with a sharp nod of acknowledgement. With a shout of "Fire Arrow!" his ally unleashed a searing projectile of flame, providing the perfect opening for him to deliver a heavy, gravity-enhanced blow to the chimera's flank. He lunges forward, his blade slicing through the air as Frayne shouts encouragement, noting that only the lion's head remains of the beast. Frayne warns him of the danger, but the young warrior is already committed to the strike. The beast counters his assault with a ferocious swipe of its massive paw, the sheer wind pressure from the blow sending him reeling backward. Frayne watches in disbelief as the force of the near miss tosses his companion through the air like a leaf in a storm. Despite the staggering force, he manages to stabilize himself in midair, his fingers tightening around the hilt of his heavy blade. A glowing sigil manifests beneath him, anchoring his resolve as he prepares to re-engage the snarling predator. The lion head lets out a deafening roar, its predatory eyes locked onto its prey. Undeterred, he hits the ground running, his momentum carrying him back into the fray as he dodges another crushing blow from the creature's limb. He delivers a powerful blow to the monster's flank, but the impact feels wrong. Looking down at his weapon, he realizes with a jolt of concern that the edge has become dull against the beast's thick hide, leaving him vulnerable. Knowing he cannot stop now, he continues his low-profile charge, the heavy blade trailing behind him as he searches for a new opening in the chimera's defenses. With a sudden burst of speed, he swings the massive sword in a wide arc, the blunt edge still carrying enough force to draw blood as it connects with the creature's leg. As he prepares for the next move, a strange sensation washes over him, centering on the magical focus on his hand. He realizes that a new power is awakening within him, a resonance he has never felt before. With newfound confidence, he points his finger at the towering beast, challenging it to a final confrontation. He declares that it is time to end this struggle once and for all. Chanting the words of his new magic, he increases the weight of his weapon to an impossible degree. The sudden surge of gravitational force pins the chimera down, and with a final, somber farewell, he prepares to deliver the finishing blow. He maintains the crushing pressure, the gravity orbs pulsing as they force the massive beast into the shattered earth. The chimera struggles against the invisible weight, but the force is absolute, pinning its multiple heads and powerful limbs firmly against the cracked stone. He knows the battle isn't over despite the creature's immobilization, his expression hardening as he prepares his final gambit. He mutters that it isn't finished yet, gripping the hilt of his massive, cloth-wrapped blade while his breath comes in ragged gasps, focusing every ounce of his remaining strength into the weapon as he prepares to strike. With a sharp gesture, he directs his power upward, invoking the Object Weight Up spell on the heavy iron sword. The weapon ascends rapidly, hovering momentarily like a massive guillotine directly over the pinned guardian of the fifth floor. He declares his triumph with a roar, shouting that the victory is his and calling for a sacrifice to the iron sword. As he speaks, he commands the blade to descend, his voice filled with the raw intensity of a warrior who has finally cornered his prey and is ready to end the hunt. The impact is instantaneous and devastating, the heavy blade shearing through the chimera's neck in a spray of dark blood. The long, grueling struggle reaches its violent conclusion as the beast's head is severed from its body, marking the end of the deadly encounter. Darkness surrounds a fading consciousness. A voice drifts through the void, announcing that the treatment is complete and that he should be waking up shortly. A thin line of light pierces the gloom as memories begin to resurface. He recalls the desperate struggle against the chimera, the weight of the battle still heavy on his mind. As the light expands, his thoughts remain clouded. He wonders what transpired in the moments after the beast was engaged. Elsewhere, the instructor concludes a briefing with the other trainees. He informs them that he is heading off to check on the one who just regained consciousness. He steps into the infirmary just as a cry of relief rings out. Ice calls out Wade's name, her voice filled with worry and hope. The young man pushes himself up in the bed, his movements slow and stiff. He looks around the unfamiliar room, his first thoughts turning to the safety of Clay and Ice. Seeing him awake, the instructor explains the situation. He notes that the group collapsed the moment they made it back from the dungeon, with 2 of the 3 falling into a deep unconsciousness. He continues his report, mentioning that he has already heard the details of their ordeal from Frayne and the 3rd member of their party, who managed to stay awake. The small room is quiet as the weight of their narrow escape settles over them. The trainees gather around the bed, grateful for their companion's recovery. The recovering youth asks if she is all right. She looks away, her expression pained as she admits that her focus wavered, allowing the dormant poison within her to flare up once more. He sat on the edge of the infirmary bed, listening as the massive instructor explained the gravity of their situation. The man noted that the chimera's venom was far more potent than they had anticipated, rendering standard antidotes nearly useless against its lingering effects. Holding a detailed report, the veteran warrior summarized the grim toll of the encounter. 1 life lost, 2 severely wounded, and 3 with minor injuries. He looked directly at the young trainee, asking if there was anything else to add to the official record, but the boy simply shook his head in silence. Outside the quiet room, the heavy footsteps of guards echoed through the stone corridors of the facility as they maintained their vigilant watch. Returning his focus to the paperwork, the instructor sighed heavily, remarking on how the boy always seemed to find himself at the heart of every crisis. From the heated duel with Frayne to the unexpected encounter with a Manticore, trouble followed him like a shadow, a fact that left the seasoned trainer both impressed and weary. He went on to acknowledge the sheer impossibility of what had occurred, stating that defeating a chimera was a feat normally reserved for veteran silver rank adventurers. The rest of the group stood nearby, their expressions a mix of exhaustion and awe as they processed the magnitude of their survival. When the young man tried to dismiss the praise, the instructor's tone turned sharp, warning him that while he might be a hero in the making, his rapid growth would make it difficult for those around him to keep pace. He envisioned a desolate battlefield, a stark reminder of the lonely path that often awaits those with such overwhelming power. Looking down at his bandaged hands, the boy felt the weight of his own uncertainty and asked what his next step should be. The veteran warrior didn't offer an easy answer, telling him firmly that the choice of how to proceed was his alone to make. He looked up as the instructor pointed a finger to emphasize his point, delivering a final, sobering truth. While the boy possessed undeniable talent and strength, he still lacked the fundamental mindset required of a true adventurer. The path of an adventurer is one of absolute freedom, beholden to no king or commander, a life where one's own choices dictate the future. This weight of responsibility is underscored as the instructor places a firm hand on the young man's bandaged arm, reminding him that the decision to proceed is his alone. He looks down at his lap, the gravity of the moment settling in, before lifting his gaze with a newfound clarity. With a confident smile, he declares his intent to move forward, earning a nod of approval from the scarred veteran who has seen many such beginnings. Watching him closely, the instructor then presents 3 bronze adventurer tags, symbols of hard-won progress, and names him the 5th egg to successfully earn this rank. After receiving the tokens from him, the boy slides the cord over his head and feels the cool metal rest against his chest, a tangible mark of his transition from trainee to adventurer. As he adjusts the tags, the veteran's final words of wisdom are characteristically blunt, urging the boy to work hard but, above all else, to stay alive. In response to his blunt advice, the youth stands tall and bows deeply in a gesture of profound gratitude, shouting his thanks for the lessons that have brought him to this threshold. Leaving him to his thoughts, the instructor turns back to his ledger, casually mentioning that since the boy's injuries have mended, he must now secure his own living quarters outside the training grounds. As the mentor departs, his fellow trainees, Frayne and the dark-haired girl, look on with a mix of curiosity and silent acknowledgement of the journey ahead. He finds himself suddenly swarmed by his companions as the weight of his departure sinks in. Clay, eyes wide with fervor, declares his intent to grow stronger, not just to watch from the sidelines but to stand as a hero by his side. Nearby, Ice is a mess of tears, her voice trembling as she pleads with him not to abandon her, promising to work harder than ever before. The sheer intensity of their devotion leaves the young adventurer reeling, his hands raised in a gesture of bewildered defense as he tries to process their sudden outburst. While he struggles with his friends' expectations, the rest of the training camp is abuzz with whispers. The news of his victory over the chimera has spread like wildfire, sparking a mixture of awe and disbelief among the other trainees. Some question how someone with such supposedly lackluster magic could achieve such a feat, while others are simply stunned by the gap that has opened between them and the boy they once overlooked. Returning his focus to the 2 before him, he listens as Clay reaffirms his support, promising to lend his strength whenever needed. Ice, still visibly shaken, can only manage a few soft words, her gaze fixed on him with a mixture of longing and resolve. Sensing the weight of the moment becoming too much, he suggests they all regroup at the Adventurers Guild later, before making a hasty, somewhat undignified exit through a nearby window to avoid further drama. Once his feet hit the grass outside, he takes a moment to breathe, the heavy blade strapped to his back a familiar comfort. He glances back at the dormitory, a wry smile tugging at his lips as he reflects on the chaotic scene he just fled. The quiet of the grounds is a sharp contrast to the emotional storm inside, and he feels a sense of liberation as he begins to walk away from the only home he's known for years. His path is soon crossed by the towering figure of the instructor, who stands amidst the silent stone markers of the training ground cemetery. The massive man eyes him with a mix of amusement and curiosity, questioning why he chose a window over the front door. He offers a vague, non-committal response, prompting the veteran to turn his gaze back to the graves. With a heavy sigh, the instructor speaks of his own regrets, his voice low as he laments his inability to save those who came before. A somber reminder of the stakes of a life Wade is now fully entering. Frayne scoffs, his expression twisted in a mix of annoyance and a grudging respect. He mutters about how arrogant the other has become, noting that they were almost more tolerable when they were out of their mind. As he watches his companion prepare to depart, Wade offers a simple parting wish for Frayne to stay alive, to which Frayne responds with a silent, brooding acknowledgement, their bond forged in the heat of battle, now settling into a quiet understanding. They gather outside the stone structure under the open sky. The tension of the dungeon has begun to fade, replaced by the mundane logistics of their next steps as the group prepares to disband for the day. The brave trainee takes charge, announcing his plan to secure lodging for the entire group. He turns to the dark-haired girl, asking if she intends to meet back up with Wade at the guild later, but she hesitates, her gaze drifting as she struggles to find an answer. He reassures her, insisting that she shouldn't hesitate to ask for help, reminding her that they are all part of the same team now. She offers a quiet word of thanks, though her mind seems elsewhere as they part ways. She finds herself alone shortly after, her footsteps echoing softly against the stone floor of a long, sun-drenched hallway. The silence of the corridor is a sharp contrast to the chaos they recently escaped. She stops before a heavy wooden door marked with a simple sign. With a steady hand, she pushes it open and steps into the room beyond, seeking a moment of solitude and perhaps something more. She stands before a tall, tapering stone monument that reaches toward a circular opening in the ceiling. Light pours down, illuminating her as she remains before the monolith in quiet, solemn contemplation. She pulls the double doors shut, the heavy thud sealing her inside the chamber. The world outside is forgotten as she prepares to face the personal ritual or reflection that brought her to this hidden place. Her thoughts drift back to a whispered conversation about secrets and things that must remain hidden. She knows she cannot speak of it yet, her expression a mask of duty as she considers the weight of the path ahead. She stands in the quiet chamber, her mind consumed by the vast gulf between her own abilities and Wade's overwhelming strength. He had surpassed everyone so decisively that she felt unworthy to even stand at his side, a mere shadow in the wake of his progress. This realization weighs heavily on her, her expression clouding with a deep, gnawing uncertainty about her place in the group and what she should do to bridge the widening gap. Sinking to the floor, she buries her face in her hands as the tears begin to fall, certain that he will only continue to grow stronger while she remains stagnant and powerless. She recalls the harrowing battles in the dungeon, realizing that he was only able to fight and survive because he was constantly diverting his attention to ensure her safety, a burden she never intended to be. Her lips tremble as a terrifying thought takes root. If things continue like this, he will eventually have no choice but to leave her behind. The tears flow freely now as she admits her deepest desire to herself. She doesn't want to be separated. She wants to be with him forever, sharing in his journey rather than watching from afar. She envisions him walking further into the depths of the dangerous dungeons, knowing that because of the increasing peril, the day will come when he can no longer justify taking her along. A single, heavy droplet falls from her chin, a physical manifestation of the despair threatening to overwhelm her. However, that despair begins to forge into a new, sharp resolve. She curls into herself, chanting a mantra that she must become stronger, no matter the cost or the effort required. Watching his back in her mind's eye as he walks toward the light of future challenges, she vows to reach a level where she can truly support him, ensuring that she is never the one left in the shadows. Even as he moved further ahead in strength, the young girl found herself drowning in the weight of her own inadequacy. Her eyes, wide and shimmering with unshed tears, reflected a soul pushed to its breaking point. She clutched at her head, her fingers tangling in her hair as a single drop of blood trickled from her bitten lip, marking the intensity of her internal struggle. She watched him from afar, her mind consumed by his overwhelming growth. Wade had become so powerful that no one could stand against him, and a desperate thought took root in her heart. She needed to become strong enough to be his rival, to be the one who could finally challenge him. Looking down at the intricate magical crest etched onto the back of her hand, she questioned if this was truly her destiny. The mark pulsed with a faint light as she contemplated the path ahead. With a focused breath, she extended her hand and whispered the incantation for ice create. A small, sharp pillar of ice materialized instantly, piercing the ground before her. Suddenly, a violent vortex of frost and energy erupted around her, far exceeding her expectations. She gasped in awe as the swirling mana coalesced into something entirely new. From the heart of the blizzard, a small, plump creature with a flower atop its head emerged, letting out a soft, chirping sound. The girl gently cradled the tiny being in her palms, her eyes wide with wonder at the unexpected manifestation of her magic. It was a living thing, born from her own power. She peered closely at the creature, asking if it possessed a will of its own. The small entity looked back at her with simple, dark eyes. When it shifted slightly in her grasp, she realized it was responsive. She wondered aloud if it would truly follow her commands and act as an extension of her intent. A sense of gratitude washed over her as she realized that with this companion, she could project her magic across great distances. She thanked the small creature, pleading for it to help her find the strength she sought. Steeling her resolve, she stood tall and brushed away any lingering doubt, refusing to let weakness take hold. With a newfound purpose, she decided it was time to seek out Wade once more. She moves through the bustling town with a newfound purpose, her thoughts consumed by a single goal. She vows to grow stronger, driven by the desire to remain at his side forever. She eventually finds him standing outside a grand stone building, positioned amidst a crowd of adventurers and trainees. He is startled when she suddenly appears before him, his hand instinctively moving toward his gear in surprise. She stands there, slightly hunched and trembling with nerves, struggling to find the right words. He questions her about the dream she once mentioned in confidence as they stand in the middle of the busy thoroughfare. He wonders aloud if it is truly wise to discuss such a private matter in front of so many onlookers. He watches as she looks up at him with a face flushed deep red, ignoring the surrounding chatter as her resolve hardens. She calls his name, drawing the attention of everyone nearby. She declares with a sudden, passionate outburst that her ultimate dream is to ensure his happiness, leaving him completely stunned. Behind them, the crowd erupts in whistles and cheers, while her small familiar watches from her shoulder. She remains a constant presence by his side as he later contemplates the weight of his own journey, acknowledging his love for the thrill of life-and-death combat against powerful foes. He fears a future where he becomes so strong that he loses the very challenges that define him. Wade and Ice share a quiet moment away from the others. She admits softly that she doesn't want him to suffer or be unhappy anymore. He, unsure how to respond to such raw sincerity, struggles to find the right words. He eventually manages a sheepish thanks, admitting he's not used to such kindness and feels a bit overwhelmed. Ice reassures him, but their moment is interrupted by the boisterous teasing of their peers, who joke about them being a couple. The young man offers a confident smile and a thumbs up, urging her to rest easy. She stares at her hands as he turns away, whispering a vow to grow stronger than ever before. A strange light fills her eyes as she resolves to become his irreplaceable enemy, to replace the happiness he lost. The other boy, Clay, watches the interaction from a distance with a smirk. He comments to Frayne about how impressive it is that Ice can rattle the usually composed Wade so easily, noting her unexpected influence over him. He then approaches the pair, announcing that he secured a room for them, and asking if they finished exchanging their loot for coin. The warrior holds up a small pouch, explaining that while they couldn't get the full sum yet, they received a significant advance. Just the Manticore's fangs were worth a gold coin on their own, a testament to their hard-won victory. He is later met with unexpected news from the receptionist at the guild counter. She informs him that the high-rank quest he's eyeing has a strict requirement, a party of at least 4 members, making their current group insufficient. He delivers the news to his companions with a heavy sigh. Clay is taken aback by the sudden hurdle, realizing their trio isn't enough to proceed with their plans, and that they must find another ally. He stands before the guild's notice board, expressing his gratitude and a hint of apology for the situation they find themselves in. Ice quickly dismisses his concerns, insisting there is no need for him to apologize. Clay joins in, noting that since they cannot accept the high-rank quest without a 4th member anyway, they should leave the final decision to their leader's judgment. They have already posted a recruitment flyer featuring sketches of the 3 of them to attract potential allies. With a gentle smile, he thanks them both for their unwavering support and understanding. Since the guild will contact them if a suitable candidate appears, he suggests they head out to get some food and then find an inn for the night. His companions readily agree, their spirits lifted as they walk away from the board, ready for a well-deserved break. The group makes their way through the bustling town square toward a large, stone and timber building that serves as a hub for travelers and adventurers alike. Outside, carriages rattle over the cobblestones and crowds of people go about their business under the afternoon sun, oblivious to the trio's recruitment efforts. Back at the guild, a group of seasoned adventurers gathers around the notice board, their attention drawn to the newly posted recruitment flyer. They lean in, whispering and pointing as they examine the unusual request, curious about the newcomers who would post such a specific advertisement. The onlookers begin to scoff, their voices filled with derision as they read the details of the flyer. They mock the mention of slowpoke magic and find the idea of a party seeking water magic users without having one themselves to be utterly ridiculous, questioning the competence of the group that would seek such a strange combination of skills. Amidst the mocking crowd, a young woman with her hair tied in a high ponytail stops to stare at the flyer, her expression one of intense focus. Her eyes widen in genuine shock as she reads the contents, her breath catching as she whispers a question to herself, seemingly finding something far more significant in the message than the others who dismissed it so easily. The morning sun bathes the bustling streets of the town in a warm glow as people go about their daily business. In the heart of the district stands a prominent stone building, the hub for adventurers seeking new opportunities. Inside, the young warrior waits as a guild official announces that a candidate has arrived to join his party. She introduces herself with a burst of energy, her hand extended in a friendly greeting as she announces her name is Toxie. Upon reviewing their records, her eyes widen in disbelief at the mention of high-level gravity and ice magic. He watches her reaction closely, confirming that their achievements are indeed real, despite her skepticism. With a playful yet sharp glint in her eyes, she warns him that she'll have to poison him if this turns out to be a prank. As the day concludes, the town settles into a quiet stillness under the cover of a moonlit night. Exhausted from the day's recruitment and the weight of his journey, he collapses onto the floor of the inn for a deep sleep. In the depths of his slumber, a vision of a legendary warrior wielding a massive blade against a dark foe flickers into existence. She vanished into the mists of his subconscious as he jolted awake, his face burning with a heat that felt entirely too real. He gripped his head, trying to steady his racing heart while the remnants of the vision flickered and died. He couldn't stop the spiral of his thoughts, realizing with a jolt of panic that his feelings for Ice had evolved into something far more complex than he was prepared for. The memory of his promise to make her happy now felt like a heavy, accidental proposal, and the mere thought of it made him want to crawl into a hole. He agonized over whether he was the only one who had misinterpreted the weight of that moment, even as he acknowledged the unwavering respect she had always shown him. He recalled how that sense of security was often anchored in simple, domestic moments, like when her mother would bring him his favorite meal with a gentle smile. The memory of that kindness made his current confusion feel even more poignant, highlighting the deep roots they had already established. As he sat in the silence, he looked back on his former life, a sterile existence where romance was a foreign concept and his youth had passed without flavor. He found himself questioning if this ache in his chest was the beginning of love or simply a protective instinct born from his new life's hardships, wondering if he was even capable of understanding the difference. He slapped his knees with a frustrated grunt to clear the mental fog, deciding that overthinking was a path to nowhere. The internal debate had only succeeded in making him hungry, and he stood up, determined to find a meal and leave the philosophy behind. He headed for the exit, concluding that if there was truly a problem, she would be the one to bring it up. Taking the lead on such delicate matters felt like an unnecessary risk, so he slid the door open, ready to trade his confusion for the simple reality of the world outside. Wade calls out to Clay and Ice, announcing that breakfast is ready and it is time to start their day. After a hearty meal, the table is left with nothing but empty dishes and a few scattered crumbs, signaling the end of their morning routine. Stepping out into the morning light, the three companions make their way through the busy, sun-drenched streets of the Labyrinth City. Clay admits to feeling a bit restless, noting that even though they visited the guild yesterday, being there for official business still makes his heart race. Ice nods in silent agreement, her own expression reflecting a similar mix of anticipation and anxiety. Wade brings up the matter of their finances, reminding them that the money they received yesterday was just an advance. He explains that they are set to receive the full balance today, which should be a significant sum. He recalls the chimera tooth they traded. The instructor had mentioned it was worth 3 gold coins, an amount that could sustain a person for 2 whole years. Clay remarks on how crowded the Labyrinth City is, noting its economic prosperity and the sheer number of people drawn to its riches. They finally reach the imposing doors of the guild. Wade looks back at his friends with a determined gaze, signaling that it's time to enter, to which Clay and Ice respond with resolute nods. Wade leads the way, his boots striking the floor with purpose as they transition from the bright exterior to the shaded interior of the building. The interior of the guild is a cacophony of sound and movement, filled to the brim with seasoned adventurers and hopeful newcomers alike, all gathered under the warm glow of the chandeliers. He approaches the guild counter, presenting his adventurer's identification and a magic seal required to finalize the transaction for the chimera loot. The receptionist's eyes widen in recognition as she recalls the young man who brought in such a rare specimen the previous day, asking him to wait a moment while she processes the request. As he waits, a wave of skeptical whispers ripples through the crowded hall behind him. The seasoned adventurers nearby find it hard to believe that such a group of fresh-faced newcomers could have actually taken down a chimera, questioning if they simply got lucky or if the story is a fabrication. Ignoring the murmurs, the young man accepts the payment from the receptionist, who returns with a tray holding 1/2 gold coin and 30 silver coins after deducting their initial advance. He feels a flush of embarrassment at the sudden attention, though he is grateful for the substantial reward for their hard work. With the coins in hand, he is stopped by the receptionist once more, who kindly suggests that they consider using the guild bank. She notes that since they have just graduated from the training center, they might not be aware of the services available to protect their newfound wealth. She explains that the bank offers absolute security for an adventurer's assets, allowing them to deposit funds that can be accessed at any guild branch using their magic seal. This system is designed to prevent the loss of wealth due to theft or accidents during dangerous expeditions into the labyrinth. Hearing this, a look of genuine surprise and appreciation crosses his face as he realizes the sophistication of the world's financial systems. His companions agree that it is a wise move, especially since they expect to earn even more as they continue their journey, and they decide to entrust their earnings to the guild's care. After setting up their account, the trio begins to make their way through the expansive guild hall, their footsteps echoing against the stone floor. The atmosphere is thick with the energy of countless adventurers preparing for their next ascent or celebrating a successful return. As they walk, he suggests that the advance they received should be treated as shared party property for their future needs. His friends readily agree, acknowledging that their success is a collective effort and that managing their resources together is the most logical path forward. His casual conversation is suddenly cut short as a sense of unease washes over him, causing him to stop in his tracks. He glances sideways, his eyes narrowing as he detects a shift in the air and the approach of unwanted attention. The source of his unease is revealed as a group of older, rough-looking adventurers blocks their path, their faces twisted in mocking grins. The leader of the group sneers at the brats, commenting on the sweet scent of money they carry and suggesting that, as their seniors, they should be entitled to a share of the spoils. He sits quietly, absorbing a harsh lesson from a seasoned figure. The man, holding a single coin aloft, warns that possessing wealth far beyond one's actual strength is a dangerous gamble. He explains that such a discrepancy inevitably draws the attention of low-life adventurers who prey on the weak, turning a hard-earned reward into a target on one's back. The veteran warrior imparts a final piece of wisdom, warning that some opponents possess hidden depths of strength. He advises the young man to keep his wealth concealed, for in the world of adventurers, power is the only true form of justice. The young trainees soon find themselves at the guild, where they are immediately accosted by a group of rough-looking veterans. One of the men mocks the boy's slowpoke magic, sneering that his journey will be a short and painful one. This scarred individual leans in close, his face twisted into a predatory grin that promises nothing but trouble. They surround the pair, demanding a protection fee of 5 silver coins per day for the privilege of their company. The thugs laugh as they insult the newcomers, making it clear that they have no respect for those they deem weak. The scarred man reaches out with a gloved hand, assuming the boy will be easily intimidated by his physical presence and rank. The confrontation takes a sudden turn as the bullies realize their target isn't backing down. They are shocked to find a mere newbie looking down on them, and they demand to see his adventurer's plate to prove his status. Their arrogance evaporates instantly when the boy reveals a collection of plates, showing he graduated with full bronze honors and even possesses the prestigious pine steel rank. The sight of such high-level credentials from a newcomer leaves them speechless. The young man fixes them with a cold, piercing gaze, his expression devoid of fear or hesitation. He asks if they have seen enough and if they are finally ready to get out of his way. The bullies scramble to retreat, their bravado replaced by sheer terror as they realize they've picked a fight with someone far above their league. Nearby adventurers whisper in awe, noting that the notorious newbie hunters have finally met their match. As they walk away from the scene, his companion is full of praise for the effortless display of dominance. Despite the victory, the boy reflects on the encounter, realizing that life within the guild will be even more troublesome than he had anticipated. He stands with his companions before the guild's quest board, the tension from the previous confrontation still lingering in the air. Frayne suggests they move on from the drama and find a job. Scanning the posted notices, they see mundane tasks like herb gathering and basic dungeon scouting. Frayne scoffs at these iron rank requests, noting they are far too simple for their current level, and asks if Wade is ready for a copper rank challenge. The conversation continues as Frayne explains the guild's safety protocols, which usually restrict dangerous tasks to higher-ranked individuals. However, he argues that to grow stronger, they must push their limits, a sentiment the young girl beside them quietly supports, mentioning she has her own goals to pursue. With their decision made, the group sets off, their footsteps echoing against the stone floor as they move toward the next stage of their journey. Arriving back at the reception counter later, the young adventurer notices something peculiar. The recruitment flyer he had posted earlier is no longer there. He inquires about the missing notice, and the receptionist, adjusting her glasses, asks him to wait while she checks the records. Moments later, she returns with a knowing look, informing him that someone has responded to his request and offering to lead him to the interested party. He is soon introduced to a vibrant young woman named Toxie, who greets him with an energetic smile and a wave. He introduces himself in return, feeling a mix of curiosity and relief that his search for a teammate might be over. They take a seat at a nearby table to discuss the details of their potential partnership, and he begins to review the documentation she provided regarding her skills and history. As he reads through her credentials, he learns that she's a recent graduate who specializes in archery and possesses the rare and dangerous affinity for poison magic. Wade reflects on the difficulty of finding a party, comparing it to the grueling job hunts of his previous life. He remembers the sting of rejection and the feeling of being unwanted due to his slowpoke magic, which many deemed useless. Seeing a similar look of weariness in the young woman before him, he offers a sympathetic smile, noting that they both seem to have had a difficult time navigating the world of adventurers. He continues the interview by asking if she has any criminal record. She quickly denies it, though she admits her specialization in poison magic often leads to misunderstandings and fear. He reassures her that it's a standard question for all applicants, not a personal judgment. She then explains her combat style, detailing how she coats her arrows in poison to maximize her effectiveness. She expresses confidence in her archery and mentions she can utilize 3 distinct types of poison magic to adapt to different situations. Elaborating further, she describes her abilities, creating solid poisons, liquid toxins, and even a poisonous mist. Beyond just harm, she notes her skill in crafting antidotes and mid-grade potions, making her a versatile support member for any team. The young man takes a moment to examine her official adventurer's license, confirming her identity as Tokishi, or Toxi, as she prefers to be called. Her credentials seem in order, despite the rarity of her magic. When he finally gives her the news that she's hired, she erupts in a shout of pure joy, leaping into the air. She tearfully explains that for the past 6 months, she's been shunned and rejected by every party because of the stigma surrounding poison magic, and she's finally found someone willing to give her a chance. After the initial excitement settles, they officially introduce themselves. When Wade reveals that his magic is gravity, Toxi's eyes widen in absolute disbelief, her jaw dropping at the revelation. She leans in close, her face lit up with intense curiosity. She's heard that weight-up magic is only good for making oneself slower, so she's desperate to know how he managed to become so powerful and capable with such a supposedly weak ability. Overwhelmed by her sudden barrage of questions, Wade holds up his hands in a defensive gesture, pleading with his new teammate to slow down and give him a chance to breathe before he explains everything. He leans back on a barrel, casually inquiring about the intense reaction they received from the thugs earlier. Holding up a set of copper identification tags, he wonders aloud if such items are truly that rare. His new companion's expression shifts to one of frantic explanation. She clarifies that to ordinary adventurers, those specific tags are the mark of the Torchlight Copper, a sign of individuals so obsessed with dungeon crawling for wealth that they've essentially discarded their humanity. She warns him that anyone carrying them is viewed as a dangerous lunatic who has lost their mind to the depths. Despite her dire warning, he remains unfazed, simply noting that the other 2 members of his party possess the exact same tags. This revelation leaves her reeling in disbelief, her voice cracking as she struggles to process how casually he admitted to being part of a group of social pariahs. She can't believe he's so nonchalant about being surrounded by people the rest of the world considers insane. She stares ahead, her eyes wide with a growing sense of dread as the reality of her situation sinks in. The realization that she has unwittingly signed on with a band of notorious madmen leaves her trembling, wondering what kind of nightmare she has just walked into. Wade and Toxi navigate the town's stone-paved streets, the morning sun casting long shadows across the architecture. He suddenly pauses, his gaze dropping to a peculiar object resting near the base of a building. He stoops to retrieve the small, round entity, marveling at its snowy appearance despite the lack of any winter frost. It is the familiar Kibitsu, appearing quite content and undisturbed in the palm of his hand. He soon facilitates an introduction between Toxi and Ice. Toxi enthusiastically announces her proficiency in poison magic, prompting Ice to respond in kind, identifying herself as a practitioner of water magic. The 2 young women find common ground instantly, their rapport blossoming as they exchange friendly greetings. He observes their budding friendship before explaining that their final companion, Clay, is currently occupied with a separate task but will join them later. He eventually guides the group toward the outskirts of the city, proposing they find a space where they can exercise their abilities without restraint. He remarks on the surprising strength of their new alliance, feeling confident in their collective potential. He provides a startling demonstration of that strength by using his magic to suspend a massive, jagged boulder high above the grassy plains. The sheer scale of the feat leaves his companions, and the local livestock, staring in absolute disbelief. He maintains a casual demeanor despite the display, while Toxi struggles to process the overwhelming power of her new teammates. She realizes this party is far more formidable than she had ever imagined, even as the small familiar floats nearby. They later reconvene at a local establishment, where the heavily armored Clay finally makes his appearance. The warrior greets the group with a boisterous wave, eager to join the fray and begin their journey together. The newly formed party stands assembled, a balanced team of diverse talents and personalities, united by their shared goals and the promise of adventure. They finish their preparations at the guild counter, presenting their credentials to the receptionist to finalize their registration for the upcoming mission. The path forward is now clear. He walked in silence, observing his new companions as they left the bustling town behind. His thoughts drifted to the general perception of poison magic. Usually, people recoiled at the mention of it, yet Clay had shown no such hesitation toward Toxie. It made him reflect on his own past, recalling the sting of prejudice he once felt when others looked down on his slowpoke magic. While he examined a small blade in his hand, the sturdy warrior spoke up, catching him off guard. The man admitted that it was his influence that had finally cleared the fog of bias from his eyes. The praise left him feeling a bit flustered, unsure of how to respond to such earnest gratitude. Reviewing the sketches of the bandits moments later, the group turned their attention to the task at hand. The trail led them to the edge of a dense, sun-dappled woodland known as the Forest of Bandits, where the shadows seemed to stretch and twist between the ancient trunks. Standing before the imposing tree line, the group discussed the geography of the region. Beyond these woods lay the peaks of Mount Olympus, a range whispered to be the dwelling of the gods themselves, a place where common folk and even seasoned adventurers rarely dared to venture. Questioning the bandits' resolve because of the mountain's reputation, the young woman wondered if they would truly risk entering such a sacred area. The sturdy warrior countered that even criminals often held onto some form of faith, suggesting that their targets might respect the divine boundaries, though the notion of pious outlaws seemed a strange contradiction to the rest of the party. The group moves cautiously through the dense thicket, their eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of the thieves. They discuss the difficulty of the task, noting that finding anyone in such a sprawling, overgrown forest will be a monumental challenge, even with their training. As they navigate the uneven terrain, Toxie offers a humble apology for her limited repertoire of earth magic, expressing a wish that she could contribute more variety to their search. Wade quickly reassures her, telling her not to worry and to simply let them know when she feels ready to try something new. Turning to her with a thoughtful expression, he asks how she typically handles this sort of investigation. She pauses, bringing a finger to her chin as she considers the best way to explain her usual methods for tracking and scouting in the wild. She explains that while standard tracking involves looking for footprints or disturbed foliage, she often resorts to marking their path manually with a knife to avoid getting lost. The conversation shifts as they weigh the efficiency of these traditional methods against the magical options at their disposal. He then proposes a more innovative approach, recalling that Ice's magic is capable of gathering information from the surrounding environment. He suggests that if they could use his magic to suspend her focus high in the air, they might be able to gain a comprehensive bird's-eye view of the entire area. She responds with a hint of hesitation, admitting that while such a feat is possible, maintaining that level of focus for a single person is incredibly taxing and time-consuming. She worries that the effort might outweigh the benefits during a high-stakes pursuit. He is taken aback, his eyes widening as he asks if she is truly limited to creating only one magical sensor at a time. In response to his doubt, she experiences a sudden surge of intuition and manifests a whole swarm of glowing familiars. She admits she didn't realize she could do it until now, but the sight of 10 spirits floating around them provide a massive boost to their morale, as they can now cover far more ground with much less effort. He watches in awe as the connection stabilizes, asking if she can truly see through all of them at once. She confirms with a nod, explaining that she can now perceive their surroundings from 10 different angles simultaneously, looking down on the group from above like a silent guardian. He then launches a dark, concentrated orb of his own magic into the sky to act as a beacon and anchor for her familiars. As the orb ascends, he asks for a status report, and she confirms that the synergy between their powers is working perfectly, granting them an unprecedented tactical advantage in the hunt. He watches as the magical sensors provide a sweeping view of the terrain, marveling at the sheer range they can cover. Ice explains that while she cannot lift them any higher, the current perspective is more than enough to scout the distance. He nods, fully grasping the tactical advantage they have secured through their combined efforts. Following this breakthrough, the group begins their trek through the dense undergrowth, moving with a newfound sense of purpose. He leads the way, his eyes scanning the shadows, while his companions follow closely behind, their footsteps muffled by the damp earth of the forest floor. As they press on, Toxie expresses her disbelief at their efficiency, noting that finding thieves in such a short time is nearly impossible without specialized wind magic, a task that usually takes days. He offers a sincere word of thanks to Ice for her invaluable contribution, then asks her to take point and guide them toward the target. Moments later, the dense trees give way to a small clearing where a weathered wooden shack stands in isolation. A lone figure sits by a small campfire outside, unaware that his sanctuary has been discovered. Crouched low in the brush, he observes the structure from a safe distance, whispering a question to Ice about whether she can detect the number of individuals hiding within the cabin. She gives a quiet, determined nod, her focus sharpening as she prepares to use her familiars for a closer look. While they wait for the reconnaissance, he reviews the mission objectives with the others, clarifying that their primary goal is the recovery of the stolen goods, though capturing the thieves would result in a significant bonus from the guild. Nearby, Toxie releases her own small, glowing companions to assist in the perimeter watch. She is suddenly struck by the gravity of the situation, her expression twisting into one of pure shock as she realizes the potential for violence. She asks with a trembling voice if they are truly prepared to take a human life if the confrontation turns deadly. The group gathers in the quiet of the woods to discuss the grim reality of their mission. Toxie admits with a nervous smile that she has never actually killed a person before, a sentiment that causes Ice to look away with a troubled expression. Wade remains silent for a moment, his mind drifting back to the countless monsters he has cut down. He reflects on the blurred line between man and beast in the heat of combat, wondering if he has already lost the distinction. He quickly refocuses, his eyes narrowing as he takes command of the situation. He lays out the strategy, emphasizing that while their goal is to capture the bandits alive for the sake of the mission, they must not hesitate to use lethal force if their own lives are put at risk. They all offer their agreement, the weight of the plan settling over the small party. The armored warrior gives a firm nod of understanding, while Toxie marvels at how quickly they have managed to coordinate their efforts. The armored warrior raises a heavy, metal-clad fist, declaring that he intends to use blunt force to neutralize their targets without taking lives. Ice adds that for someone with Wade's strength, even a single punch could be fatal to a common kobold, let alone a human. They continue to refine their roles, acknowledging Wade as the vanguard who will charge in like a wild boar to break the enemy's line. Ice prepares to use her magic to freeze the ground, ensuring the bandits are unable to flee or maneuver effectively. Toxie flashes a confident grin and a peace sign, reassuring the group that her poisons are highly adjustable. She explains that she can switch her concoctions to non-lethal variants, allowing her to contribute to the capture without causing permanent harm. Ice moves to the edge of the clearing to scout the enemy's position, her eyes fixed on a small cabin in the distance. She reports back that there are 5 bandits in total, 2 standing guard outside, and 3 more currently inside the building. Wade thanks her for the vital information and suggests a tactical adjustment. He asks if she can direct her ice blow at the structure itself rather than the people, using the environment to trap them rather than risking a direct hit. Toxie draws her bow and prepares a specialized arrow, confirming that she will follow up the ice attack with a cloud of paralytic mist. She tells Wade to leave the rest to her, her expression focused and ready for the ambush to begin. She remains hidden as her companions, the 2 armored trainees, finalize their roles. One of them confidently asserts that once the bandits are weakened, they will simply overpower and bind them, asking Wade if he is ready to do the same. His partner dismisses the question as foolish, his resolve already set. From their vantage point in the dense woods, the group watches the target, a small, weathered wooden cabin nestled among the trees. A lone sentry stands guard by the door, oblivious to the eyes watching him from the shadows of the forest. Seizing the moment, the archer draws her bow and releases a specialized arrow that streaks through the air. Upon impact, it erupts into a thick, billowing cloud of smoke that quickly envelopes the cabin. Inside, the bandits cry out in confusion and alarm, realizing too late that they are under attack as the obscuring mist fills their lungs. As the smoke clears, the effects of the trap become apparent, leaving the bandits disoriented and struggling against the freezing ground. One man gasps in shock as he finds his hand frozen solid to the earth, unable to pull away. Seizing the opening, the 2 armored boys charge forward, their heavy boots crunching on the frost-covered grass. They strike with practiced efficiency, delivering swift, non-lethal blows to the incapacitated man. With a heavy thud, the bandits are rendered unconscious. Standing over their fallen foes, the boys confirm that 2 have been neutralized and immediately prepare to move on to the remaining targets. The group has cornered the outlaws in their forest hideout. Inside the wooden shack, the bandits roar in frustration, pounding against the locked door and demanding to be let out. Outside, the struggle is brief and decisive. A single, heavy blow connects with a bandit's jaw, sending him reeling as the ambush reaches its climax. They remain undeterred as the door holds firm against the desperate kicks and shouts from within. Wade stands guard outside, his expression focused as he listens to the muffled threats. He remains unmoved by their demands, knowing the situation is firmly under their control. Meanwhile, she waves a hand dismissively, a playful smirk on her face as she explains that the poison hasn't even had time to take full effect yet. The bandits are merely feigning defeat to lower their guard. Wade watches her, noting the casual confidence with which she handles the tactical deception. As the area is secured, he steps into the dim interior of the shack alongside his armored companion, finding the remaining outlaws slumped against the walls. The threat has been completely neutralized, leaving the room filled only with the heavy breathing of the incapacitated man. Moments later, they gather in the small clearing surrounding the cabin. The forest is quiet once more, save for the sounds of the trainees organizing the scene and securing the perimeter. They begin the process of recovering the stolen goods, piling the heavy sacks near the entrance. Wade confirms that once these items and the captives are handed over to the guild, their mission will be officially complete, earning a nod of approval from his teammates. They feel a sense of relief wash over them as they celebrate their successful coordination. Toxie cheers enthusiastically, her energy infectious, while Wade offers a quiet smile, acknowledging the hard work everyone put into the operation. As they prepare to leave, she beams at him, remarking on how their strength has grown through these trials. While they begin to trek back, Wade reflects on their journey, realizing that while they have become a formidable team, their path as adventurers is only just beginning. The group gathers around a table laden with a roasted beast and various side dishes, raising their wooden mugs in a triumphant toast to celebrate the completion of their first mission. He lets out a boisterous laugh, relishing the refreshing taste of the brew and declaring that a drink after a hard day's work is truly the best. Beside him, the young woman watches with a gentle smile, noting how much he reminds her of her father, while their companion grimaces at the sharp, bitter flavor of the liquid. The young man admits that the drink isn't meant for gulping down, but for savoring the lingering aftertaste, though he concedes it will take some time to get used to it. She takes a small sip, her expression softening as she acknowledges that seeing her partake in the festivities might come as a surprise to the others. The youth turns to her with a look of curiosity when she mentions that her father had actually put her through training to handle her liquor. She explains that in the world of commerce, alcohol is a powerful tool used by merchants to put others in a good mood and secure favorable contracts. With a playful glint in her eye, she boasts that she's actually quite a strong drinker, much more than her delicate appearance might suggest. The young warrior continues to drink steadily, the effects of the alcohol beginning to show in the slight flush on his cheeks as he drains another mug. Suddenly, she bursts into the room and leaps onto his back with a wild shout of excitement, her boisterous energy catching everyone off guard. She is in high spirits, flashing a peace sign and demanding a second round of drinks. She playfully scolds Wade, telling him he needs to keep up and drink more, while Ice tries to intervene, suggesting that she has already had quite enough. Her boisterous laughter fills the tavern as she lets out a long, joyful shout that draws the attention of the entire table. Nearby, the armored trainee watches Wade with a mix of surprise and respect, noting that the young man can certainly hold his liquor better than anyone expected. He leans back, a flush of intoxication on his cheeks, declaring that moments like these are exactly what make the life of an adventurer worth living. When a peer jokingly challenges him to demonstrate his weight magic while in this state, he dismisses the idea with a lazy wave, preferring to simply enjoy the rowdy atmosphere. She watches the chaos with a soft, rare smile, her own mug held close as her small familiar, Kibitsu, floats cheerfully beside her. The usually stoic girl seems to find a sense of belonging in the celebration, her quiet joy reflecting the warmth of the group's newfound camaraderie. He clinks his heavy wooden mug against the armored trainees with a resounding thud, both of them reveling in the shared triumph of their mission. They agree that this sense of community is the true pinnacle of their profession, a hard-earned reward for the dangers they face together in the depths. As the night wears on, the conversation turns to the drinks themselves, with some opting for carbonated water, while others stick to the stronger spirits. He insists that as long as the heart is in the right place, the contents of the glass don't matter, cementing the bond between the allies as they toast to their future. In the rowdy atmosphere of the tavern, Toxie is in high spirits, slamming a large mug onto the table and boisterously urging Wade to celebrate their victory. Beside them, Ice huddles over her own drink, shivering and lamenting that her water seems far colder than everyone else's. She continues her energetic toast, declaring that her own performance was nothing short of spectacular and demanding that the group recognize her greatness. The young girl, overwhelmed by the sudden warmth of the tavern and the intensity of the celebration, finds herself moved to tears by the simple kindness of being included. The sturdy warrior, Clay, leans in next, offering Wade a special bottle as a sincere gesture of thanks for his bravery in the dungeon. Wade is caught off guard by the formal praise, his face reddening as he tries to accept the gift while Ice continues to sulk over her freezing glass. He is suddenly jerked backward, his breath catching in his throat as he is pulled away from the table by an unseen force. His eyes go wide with shock, his mind racing to understand who could have moved with such silent speed. The mysterious woman who has claimed him pulls his head into her lap, cradling him with an unsettlingly familiar tenderness. Toxie's celebratory mood sours instantly, and she pouts with exaggerated jealousy, annoyed that this newcomer has hijacked Wade's attention. She offers a serene, knowing smile to the group, her eyes closed as if savoring the moment of connection. The young man remains paralyzed in her embrace, his initial panic giving way to a profound sense of confusion as she ignores the surrounding chaos. The ethereal figure begins to stroke his hair with a slow, rhythmic motion, her touch light and soothing. She whispers promises of protection, telling him that she has been watching and will continue to keep a close eye on his progress. They all watch in stunned silence from across the table, the rowdy atmosphere of the tavern replaced by a heavy, expectant tension. Even the normally stoic Clay pauses his meal, sensing that the dynamic of their group has just been irrevocably altered by this woman's presence. Ignoring their bewildered stares, she repeats her praise in a soft, hypnotic lilt, calling him a good boy over and over again. The repetition fills the air, creating a strange bubble of intimacy that seems to isolate the two of them from the rest of the world. The enigmatic lady leans down, her gaze intensifying as she speaks of his triumph over the chimera. She marvels at the fact that a mere rookie could achieve such a feat, her smile widening with a pride that borders on the obsessive as she reaffirms his worth. She finds the situation amusing, her voice light as she watches the young man's reaction. Across the table, Clay remains seated, observing the bizarre display with a neutral expression. Wade, however, is reaching his limit. His hand trembles violently against the wood of the table as he silently pleads for his friend to intervene and save him from this overwhelming, suffocating attention. Her smile only widens, radiating a warmth that borders on the obsessive as she leans in closer to the boy. She reassures him that it is perfectly fine if he falters or becomes a bit useless, insisting that his mere existence is a miracle in itself. To her, the fact that he is simply alive and present is more than enough, her praise flowing without restraint or concern for the public setting. Overwhelmed by the sheer intensity of her affection, the boy looks up with a face flushed deep crimson, his eyes wide with a mix of shock and desperation. He lets out a frantic cry, calling out to Clay once more, begging for some form of rescue from the suffocating weight of the woman's adoration, which feels more like a physical force than mere words. Despite his pleas, he finds himself succumbing to the strange comfort of her words, his expression softening into a dazed, blissful state. He feels his heart, which had been hardened and scarred by the neglect of his own father, beginning to dissolve under the relentless heat of her maternal warmth. Nearby, Clay takes a calm sip of his drink, casually remarking that such a transformation might actually be a positive development for his friend's troubled spirit. As he watches his friend's heart seemingly dissolve, the large warrior reflects on the sudden shift in the evening's atmosphere, noting how his own intentions to offer comfort to Ice were completely derailed by this unexpected arrival. He watches as the mysterious woman continues to hold court at their table, her presence having utterly transformed the victory celebration into something far more surreal and emotionally charged than anyone had anticipated. A pair of luminous, star-patterned eyes loom over a small, distant figure, exerting an overwhelming and hypnotic presence. Beneath that piercing gaze, the young man finds himself surrounded by his companions, their voices echoing with a strange, unsettling sweetness as they suggest he belongs under their control. Suddenly, he jolts awake with a sharp gasp, the suffocating weight of the dream finally lifting as he returns to the waking world. He immediately reaches for a mug, gulping down water to soothe his parched throat and clear the lingering fog from his mind. As he regains his bearings, he notices the tense atmosphere of the tavern, where his companion stands nearby while a group of rowdy men loiters in the background. He turns to the green-haired girl, asking what happened, only to be interrupted by the mocking laughter of the thugs who jeered his apparent weakness. Ignoring their taunts for a moment, he focuses on the situation at hand, his expression hardening as he realizes the trouble they've encountered. The leader of the group, a man with a scarred face and an eye patch, barks out an insult, dismissing the girl's worth and asserting his dominance. Turning away from the shouting man, the youth looks back at his friend, seeing the fear and hesitation in her eyes as she struggles to find the words to explain. With a calm, steady hand, he rests his palm on her head, promising that he won't abandon her and telling her to wait there while he handles the situation. He stands his ground as the two men loom over him, their presence a physical threat in the cramped tavern. The one with the eye patch sneers, demanding to know what he thinks he's doing by interfering. Because of his reputation, the men burst into mocking laughter, realizing he is the slowpoke magic user they've heard rumors about. They find it hilarious that a failure like him would team up with someone like Toxie, calling the pairing a masterpiece of incompetence. Ignoring their laughter, he sighs and rubs the back of his neck, explaining that they're simply trying to enjoy their meal and would prefer not to be interrupted. He reiterates that he has no interest in whatever business they think they have, but the thugs only see his calm demeanor as an invitation to push further. As the tension rises, the scarred leader points a finger toward the girl, claiming they're actually doing him a favor by warning him about her. He questions his sanity for bringing her into his party, causing her to cry out in a desperate plea for them to stop. Moments later, she trembles under their gaze, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and shame as they suggest she has secrets that need to be shared. They mockingly ask if she'd really prefer to keep those secrets to herself, knowing the weight of the words they're using to break her spirit. Finally, the leader's true motive surfaces as he demands money, calling him a goldsmith and insisting that they share the wealth from their recent successes. He reaches out and grips his shoulder firmly, but he remains silent, his eyes hidden in shadow as the situation reaches a breaking point. Wade stands firm against the thugs, his voice cold as he declares that anyone who makes themselves an enemy of Toxie is an enemy of his as well. He suddenly unleashes his magic, and the air fills with dark, floating orbs that seize the thugs, lifting them off the ground in a state of sheer panic. The crushing force of the magic intensifies, slamming the men back down and pinning them to the earth as they howl in confusion and pain. He looks down at the broken men and asks with a mocking edge how they enjoyed the weight of his slowpoke magic. His gaze narrows, signaling that the time for their posturing is over and that he is now the one in control. He demands they explain exactly how they were threatening Toxie, warning them that if their story doesn't perfectly match what she tells him later, he will end their lives without hesitation. He turns briefly to the stunned girl, telling her to stay back and promising to explain his secrets later, as he intends to finish this business quickly. The thugs begin to babble in terror, confessing that Toxie's parents owe a massive debt of 10 gold coins and that they were simply sent to collect what was due. The leader desperately begs for mercy, claiming he was misled and pleading for Wade to spare him as he grovels in the dirt. Wade finally relents, agreeing to let them go for now. But his stern expression leaves no doubt that this is their only warning. He watches as the two thugs lie groaning on the floor, their bravado completely extinguished by his overwhelming magic. The guild receptionist stands nearby, observing the aftermath of the brief but decisive confrontation and preparing to intervene officially. After assessing the scene, she calmly informs the group that she has a full understanding of the situation and will handle the official processing of the troublemakers from here. The armored trainee offers a polite word of thanks, relieved that the guild is stepping in to resolve the dispute properly. With the immediate threat neutralized, they gather around a table littered with the remains of a meal, where he quietly hands over a gold coin as a gesture of support to help with the looming financial burden. He then suggests that with the matter settled for now, it's time for them to make their way back home. As they depart, he finds himself deep in thought, staring at the coin in his hand and realizing that even in a world filled with magic, some problems cannot be solved by force alone. The memory of the thug's shouts about the debt incurred by Toxie's parents remains a stark reminder of the harsh realities that exist beyond the reach of his spells. The group gathers in a quiet room, the weight of their recent discovery hanging in the air as they prepare to address the looming crisis. Toxie offers a sheepish apology, her usual energy replaced by a somber realization of the trouble she has caused. Wade and Clay listen intently as she admits her debt is her own burden, though she feels terrible for dragging them into it. He leans forward, his expression serious, as he clarifies that while he doesn't mind being involved, he wants to help her earn the money to pay it back herself rather than just giving it to her. A confident smile spreads across his face as he speaks of the future, acknowledging the risks but emphasizing the potential rewards of their partnership if they face the challenges together. This display of loyalty touches his companions. Clay reaffirms his desire to grow stronger alongside him, while Toxie stands by, visibly moved by their unwavering support. Overwhelmed by their kindness, she breaks down into tears, sobbing her thanks to the friends who refuse to let their new party dissolve despite the massive financial burden. Once the initial wave of emotion passes, the discussion turns to the root of the problem, her poison magic, which led her into the hands of a swindler who exploited her desperation to control it. The dark history of such power is revealed, recalling a time when a poison mage's treachery against royalty turned the world against all who wielded that volatile and feared art. Because of this legacy, the magic is strictly regulated and often suppressed within the training academies, leaving those born with it to struggle in the shadows of society. He absorbs this grim history with a steady gaze, eventually asking her to explain the full details of her situation so they can find a way to overcome the stigma and the debt together. He listens intently as the young woman begins to recount her history, explaining that only half a year ago, she too was a trainee. She reveals that her parents were unable to reconcile with the nature of the magic she had been granted, viewing it as a curse rather than a gift. Because of this rejection, her father, a man of high standing within the priesthood, became obsessed with altering her fate. He sought out every magic master he knew, begging them to change her innate power, but each refusal only drove him further into a spiral of madness and desperation. Following her family's descent into chaos, she fell prey to a silver-tongued swindler who cheated her out of 5 large gold coins. Though she managed to scrape together enough to pay back 4 of them, the remaining debt loomed over her like a shadow, a sum so vast it left her companions reeling in shock. As the weight of the situation sinks in, the armored warrior ponders the sheer scale of the debt, noting that while members of the clergy often possess wealth rivaling that of the nobility, his own humble origins in the slums make such astronomical figures difficult to even comprehend. In the wake of these tragedies, the girl's family life shattered completely, culminating in her father's death from a heart consumed by rage and despair. Left with nothing, she was forced into the life of a destitute adventurer, a story that leaves her listeners in a heavy, contemplative silence. She further explains how the swindler had cunningly directed her to a high-interest moneylender to cover the shortfall, a predatory tactic that strikes a chord of familiarity in the young man. It was a classic trap, reminiscent of the schemes he had seen in another life, preying on the desperate and the uninformed. Hearing the full extent of the deception, the young man questions why the authorities haven't been involved, suggesting that they simply report the crime to the city's peacekeepers. However, his suggestion is met with a look of weary skepticism from the girl. He quickly realizes his own ignorance of the local power dynamics as she clarifies the harsh reality of their surroundings. In this fortified city, the protection of the guards is a luxury reserved for the manicured streets of the noble districts and the wealthy merchant quarters, leaving those on the fringes to fend for themselves. Wade reflects on the harsh reality of this world compared to his past memories, noting that corruption is rampant and the law offers no protection to the weak. Clay agrees, pointing out that commoners are essentially left to fend for themselves in a system that ignores their plight. He narrows his eyes as the weight of this realization settles in, understanding that if the system is broken, the common people are nothing more than prey for those with power. With a sharp, predatory grin, he proposes a radical solution. They should hunt down the scammers themselves, find the loan sharks backing them, and reclaim every coin that was stolen. This bold declaration leaves his companions with mixed reactions. Toxie is visibly shaken by the scale of the idea, while Clay remains stoic, and Ice watches with a serene, almost knowing smile. She quickly warns him that the loan shark in question isn't just some petty criminal, but a high-ranking official in a massive gang known as Night Father, describing them as a true mafia far beyond the level of common thugs. He adds to the warning, explaining that Night Father is a notorious organization that even recruits from the trainee ranks, possessing vast numbers that make them a formidable shadow over the city. Looking out at the bustling crowds, he notes that the gang likely has countless copper rank members acting as foot soldiers, with silver rank leaders overseeing their operations. He then inquires about the higher tiers, specifically gold and platinum ranks, but Ice dismisses the concern for now, suggesting they treat such legendary figures as if they don't even exist in this conflict. He elaborates on the hierarchy, explaining that gold rank is largely an honorary title given to veterans when they retire to become guild masters. Finally, he concludes that platinum ranks are so rare they aren't worth worrying about, as there is typically only one master for each discipline in the entire world. The armored youth watches as his companion calculates the odds, noting that if the enemy has a few silver ranks, dozens of copper, and countless iron, they can still manage. Wade's gaze is sharp, his mind already working through the tactical reality of the Night Father gang's hierarchy and how they might dismantle it. In response to his cold logic, the girl with the green-tipped hair cries out in protest, her arms spread wide as if to shield them from her own burdens. She insists that she never asked to drag everyone into her mess, pleading that she only wanted to pay off her debt slowly through her own efforts without endangering her friends. The distressed girl can only watch as he cuts through her panic with a steady voice, asserting that they will handle this as a rowdy adventure, their way. She can only stammer in response, her protest dying in her throat as she looks at his unwavering expression and realizes he has no intention of backing down. Seeing his resolve, the dark-haired girl beside him smiles, her familiar perched atop her head as she declares her unwavering loyalty to follow him anywhere. Even the large trainee in heavy plate armor can't help but chuckle, admitting that while it's frustrating, Wade's heroic nature is undeniable, and he fully intends to participate in the upcoming confrontation. They watch her stand frozen, her head darting back and forth, as she realizes the group has already reached a consensus without her. The sudden shift in the atmosphere leaves her bewildered, her hands trembling slightly as the weight of their collective support begins to sink in, replacing her fear with confusion. She watches as he reaches out a hand toward her, the young leader asking if she intends to join them on this quest to dismantle the loan shark's operation. He explains that this is no longer just about her debt. It's a new mission they've set for themselves, and the guild won't stop them just because they're missing one member. He remains waiting as she stares at him, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and disbelief as she tries to process the absurdity of the situation. The realization that they are willing to risk everything for her sake leaves her questioning if she's even hearing them correctly, her mind racing to find a reason for their kindness. Wade stands before his companions, his voice steady as he outlines their next move. He explains that while Toxie is resting, they cannot simply ignore the debt hanging over her. As adventurers, they have a responsibility to look out for one another, and he refuses to let a teammate suffer alone. He declares his intention to head straight into the heart of the Night Father's territory to settle the matter once and for all, reminding them that this is what it means to be a party. He clenches his fist, the leather of his glove creaking under the strain of his resolve. The weight of leadership is heavy, but his determination to protect his friends is stronger. "I'm going to." Toxie's voice rings out, startling the group as she steps forward with a fierce look in her eyes. She refuses to be left behind while others fight her battles. She continues, her voice rising with a mix of frustration and stubbornness, making it clear that no amount of persuasion will keep her from joining the fray. Wade can only watch, realizing that her spirit is as unyielding as a mountain storm. The young leader sighs, calling out her name as he realizes there is no stopping her. He compares her to a wild boar, charging headlong into danger, and decides that if they are to survive, he must step up and truly lead this chaotic group. He tells her that from now on, he will be the one to keep the party steady, because without a firm hand, they would surely meet a swift end in such a dangerous place. He watches as she laughs at his serious tone, the tension breaking as they begin to walk together. She playfully agrees to let him handle the player duties while she continues to be herself, noting with a smirk that his attempt to act as a brake on her impulses actually seemed to work for once. The scene shifts away from the companions to a desolate, crumbling fortress nestled among jagged cliffs. This ruined stronghold, once a place of defense, now serves as a grim sanctuary for those who dwell in the shadows. Inside the damp, stone walls, a man cowers on the floor, his voice trembling as he begs for mercy and warns of a chimera stalking the area. His pleas are met with a cold, violent response from the scarred leader of the thugs, who snarls at him to be silent. The brute threatens to add the man to a growing pile of corpses if his shouting draws the attention of the city guards. He turns his attention to his subordinate, dismissing the orders of their superiors with a wave of his hand. He expresses a blatant disregard for the Night Father's commands, caring little for the politics of their organization. However, he is troubled by reports of a chimera appearing near the dungeon entrance, a strange occurrence that deviates from the usual patterns of the monsters. He bellows at the rest of his men, his face contorted with rage as he demands to know why their boss hasn't emerged yet. He warns them all that if any harm comes to the leader while he is in his chambers, none of them will live to see the sunrise, his voice echoing through the cold, stone halls of the hideout. The thugs continue their vigil, but deep within the tunnels, others are less concerned. A supervisor reassures his clerk that the old man in charge won't perish easily, especially with those two formidable companions at his side. Nearby, the reality of the excavation is far more grim, with weary laborers slumped against the jagged stone walls, their tools abandoned in the dim light. This stagnation enrages their employer, a bald man who bellows in fury. He screams that he didn't pay a king's ransom for them to coddle the workers. He hired them solely for his own protection. His tirade is cut short as a massive chimera emerges from the shadows, its multiple heads snarling as it corners the group within the narrow passage. The beast lets out a deafening roar, its presence accompanied by a strange, shimmering distortion in the air that leaves the employer paralyzed with terror. The scarred warrior stood firm, a confident smirk playing on his lips as he shielded his employer from the looming threat in the narrow canyon. Ignoring the frantic, high-pitched demands of the bald man behind him, he lunged toward the massive beast, his blade already drawn and ready for the kill. He moved with a practiced grace, dodging the chimera's heavy paws with ease while the young archer looked on, noting the sheer gap in their combat abilities. The creature let out a final, deafening roar before his sword found its mark, the impact of the blow sending a shockwave through the rocky pass. Even as the main body of the beast collapsed, he remained vigilant, severing the thrashing serpent tail with a single, precise stroke to ensure the threat was neutralized. Silence finally fell over the canyon as the once mighty guardian of the path lay still, its lifeblood staining the dry earth. He sheathed his weapon and turned to listen to the client's impatient complaints about the delay, seemingly unfazed by the life-or-death struggle that had just concluded. Turning to his companion, he noticed her slumped shoulders and weary expression as she voiced her desperate wish to simply return home and sleep after the exhausting ordeal. They began the long walk back, his constant, light-hearted chatter filling the air while she remained stoic and silent, clearly finding his presence more taxing than the battle itself. He then mentioned a curious rumor he'd heard at the tavern. A mere trainee from the latest graduating class had supposedly taken down a chimera on their own, a feat that finally seemed to pique her interest. He continues to boast about the newcomer's feats, but the young woman with the high ponytail remains unimpressed. Adjusting her metal gauntlet, she dismisses the news, stating that she has no interest in those who are merely conventionally strong. Below her, the subject of the rumors, the young man with the dark, spiky hair, walks alongside his armored companion, unaware of the conversation taking place above them. Wade laughs heartily, his arm draped casually over Toxie's shoulder as he addresses the group. He jokingly labels her a malicious fraudster before shifting the mood to the serious task of devising a counter-strategy against the Night Father organization. He is met with a chuckle from Clay, who sits heavily on a nearby bench, while Ice remains quiet, her expression unreadable as she listens to the banter. Moments later, the young leader stands tall, his demeanor shifting from playful to professional. He commands the room's attention, declaring that the time for their strategy meeting has finally arrived. He begins by clarifying their approach, explaining that they will avoid any grand, foolish gestures like a formal declaration of war against the entire Night Father Syndicate, as such a move would be suicidal. Because of this, Clay nods in agreement, though Wade quickly adds that while the point seems obvious, it is vital to establish their boundaries clearly before they proceed any further. As he speaks, he notices Toxie's sudden bashfulness. She fidgets nervously while he reminds her that in their line of work, misunderstandings are a constant and dangerous variable. In response, Ice looks away, her face flushing a deep crimson as she quietly remarks on his tendency to seek out the strongest opponents, a comment that leaves the rest of the group momentarily stunned. He simply offers a knowing wink, his expression brimming with a confidence that suggests he is well aware of his own reputation and the risks they are about to take. The group then huddles closer around his central chest, the atmosphere in the small wooden room thickening with focus as they prepare to dive into the specifics of the operation. He raises a single finger to emphasize his primary objective. They are to isolate and corner the fraudster alone, ensuring the entire confrontation appears as a natural occurrence to any outside observers. He listens intently as Toxie breaks down the harsh reality of their situation. She reasons that the fraudster has likely squandered the stolen funds already, meaning the trail of gold inevitably leads back to the high-interest lenders who back him. Clay nods in somber agreement, acknowledging that her assessment of the criminal underworld's logistics is likely spot on. The looming threat of the Night Father organization hangs over them like a crushing weight. If news were to spread that a group of rookie adventurers humiliated one of their members, the syndicate would be forced to retaliate violently just to maintain their fearsome reputation. Ice voices her growing concern about the scale of the enemy, but Wade remains steadfast. He argues that a prolonged, all-out war would only lead to their eventual defeat, and they have far more important goals than being hunted out of the city by mafia. With a sharp, confident glint in his eyes, he reveals the core of his strategy. They must neutralize the fraudster in a way that doesn't bruise the ego of the loan sharks, making the intervention look like a private matter rather than a challenge to the organization. The others remain skeptical, struggling to grasp the logistics of the plan. They question how they can possibly recover the stolen money if the culprit is already broke, wondering how the debt will actually be settled. He illustrates the final stroke of his scheme with a grim smile. They will beat the truth out of the fraudster and then force him to take a high-interest loan from his own criminal associates to pay back his victims, effectively turning the syndicate's greed against itself. Wade stands before his companions, outlining a strategy to apprehend the scammers and force them to settle their debts with the loan shark. He clenches his fist with a sharp, focused gaze, acknowledging that the loan shark will likely resist, necessitating their total defeat as well. Continuing his explanation, he details the nuance of their approach. Publicly, they are merely resolving a dispute with scammers, but privately, they are dismantling the loan shark's operation to prevent future retaliation. He adds a stern caveat, warning the team to avoid lethal force against the scammers, the loan shark, or even their hired muscle, preferring to send a clear message through overwhelming but non-fatal combat. This intense focus causes a moment of hesitation among the group, with Ice noting the inherent danger of the task they are about to undertake. A brief flash of his former life as a weary office worker crosses his mind, serving as a silent reminder of the administrative burdens he once bore. He then asks if anyone has further questions, prompting an immediate hand to rise from the group. In response to Toxie's inquiry about how they will find the targets, he reveals a plan to use her memory to create sketches for a coordinated search. He remains deep in thought, even as she offers a grateful smile for his thoroughness, weighing the risks of the upcoming confrontation. Seeing his resolve, Ice steps forward to ask if she can help, but he reminds her of the strength of the enemies they face and promises a final briefing before they strike. He leaned back, hand behind his head, calculating the logistics of their upcoming operation. With Toxie's debt cleared, they had a surplus of 4 large gold coins, but adding another member to the team would complicate the distribution of their remaining funds. This revelation left Toxie reeling in disbelief, her eyes wide at the mention of such a massive reward for their efforts. Ignoring her shock, he pivoted the discussion toward their first objective, securing accurate sketches of the scammers to identify their targets effectively. He then turned to the group, inquiring if anyone knew a skilled artist who could take on the commission. Clay and the others exchanged uncertain glances, while Ice remained quiet, her gaze averted as if contemplating a difficult choice. She eventually spoke up, her voice small as she admitted to having some skill with a brush. Though he was initially surprised by her offer, her shy but determined expression convinced him to let her try her hand at the task. Moments later, she presented her work, and the room fell silent in awe. The level of detail was staggering, capturing the likenesses of their targets with a precision that far exceeded anyone's expectations. Toxie erupted in praise, declaring that such talent belonged in a royal court, but the young artist simply blushed. She insisted that her only desire was to be of use to him and the rest of the team in their shared mission. With the sketches in hand, he began outlining the next phase, emphasizing the need for absolute discretion. He explained that many of the new recruits in the area were little more than thugs, and if their group was spotted, the scammers would likely vanish before they could strike. His gaze sharpened as he refined the criteria for their ideal informant. They needed someone familiar with the underworld's inner workings, someone rough around the edges, yet possessing a core of integrity that hadn't been completely corrupted by the city's shadows. He ultimately decided that a solo reconnaissance mission was the most prudent course of action to avoid drawing unwanted attention. Despite her desire to accompany him, he instructed her to remain at the inn for her own safety while he scouted the riverbank alone. Wade stands with his companions, Toxie and Clay, discussing their next move. He decides to tap into his information network rather than just waiting around. Toxie and Clay, eager to contribute, offer their assistance, wondering what they can do to help. He smiles warmly at them, acknowledging their support and agreeing to leave the task in their hands for the moment. Meanwhile, the narrow, sun-drenched alleys of the slums are bustling with the usual activity of the desperate and the downtrodden. Suddenly, a violent impact shatters the peace. A cloaked figure is struck by a powerful force, sent reeling backward with a pained cry as the air around him erupts in a blur of motion. The man, Frayne, finds himself surrounded by a group of local thugs. They mock him as he struggles to his feet, but the confrontation quickly turns heated. Flames erupt as Frayne defends himself, leaving one of his attackers writhing on the ground while the others hesitate, realizing they've picked the wrong target. He stands tall amidst the squalor, his expression hardening as he reflects on the harsh reality of the slums. He knows all too well that even among the poor, people will prey on their own, and he remembers the struggle of those determined to rise from the very bottom. Turning back to the cowering thugs, he reminds them that he is no stranger to this place, having come from the same streets they now haunt. His fist clenches tightly, knuckles white with tension, as he stares them down with a gaze full of simmering resentment before beginning to walk away. However, his path is suddenly blocked. Wade appears, reaching out to catch Frayne's arm and halting his departure with a firm, steady grip. The two former rivals face each other in the middle of the alley. Wade questions why he is wandering these dangerous streets alone, while Frayne, ever defensive, scoffs at Wade's return to this trash heap, only to learn that Wade is there on an official Iron Rank quest. He stands there, arms crossed, as Wade probes about his situation. When asked if he's searching for a way to make some coin, the white-haired youth admits that, for the moment, he is indeed in need of funds. Wade's sudden, knowing grin puts him on edge, and he sharply warns his companion not to sound like some low-life recruiter peddling a scam. Because he aspires to the noble path of a knight, he makes it clear that he detests the kind of shady dealings being hinted at. The dark-haired youth watches him, silently weighing the situation. Despite his personal reservations about the boy, he recognizes that the candidate possesses a unique combination of underworld connections and a surprisingly straight moral compass. He watches the white-haired boy walk away, but refuses to let the conversation end there. Wade calls out, insisting that the job isn't a scam and is actually a perfect match for those specific skills. He knows that the offer is too good for someone in desperate need of money to ignore entirely. He maintains a light-hearted tone, asking the other not to be so cold. The recruiter explains that while his delivery might have been suspicious, the work is legitimate and exactly what is needed right now. He urges the boy to reconsider, emphasizing that the opportunity is tailor-made for him. He notes the conflict in the other's eyes as a weary sigh is released. Wade realizes that finding a replacement would be far too much trouble, confirming his belief that Frayne is the only one for the task. Despite the friction between them, the necessity of the situation begins to bridge the gap. Wade follows the scarred man through the bustling, sun-drenched streets of the town. The crowd is thick, and the young man remarks on how many people are around, prompting his guide to lead him toward a quieter area. They turn into a narrow, shadowed alleyway, their footsteps echoing against the stone walls as they leave the noise of the main thoroughfare behind. Stopping in the secluded passage, the man with the bandana turns to ask about the specifics of the job. He notes that a single silver coin is a fair price for a search, even if it takes time, and asks for a description of the target. He mentions a name that causes the young adventurer to freeze in surprise. The realization that they're talking about the same person hangs heavy in the air. The scarred leader spits out the name with venom, describing the individual as a notorious con artist who has left a trail of deception across the land. He mentions that the target is currently hiding out in the slums, and he asks Wade what his true intentions are for seeking such a man. Wade explains that his companions were recently swindled, and he intends to recover their stolen funds. The older man warns him that this fraud is a slippery character, well known for his ability to vanish, but the youth remains undeterred, insisting he has a plan. The leader remains skeptical, questioning if this is truly for his friends or if he's just looking for payday. He observes that the boy has grown significantly stronger since their last encounter, a change that hasn't gone unnoticed. Wade admits that while he wants to help, he also desperately needs the money. A look of grim contemplation crosses the scarred man's face as he considers the proposal. He mutters to himself about the reward being worth the trouble, despite the risks involved. Seeing the man's hesitation, the young warrior offers a confident, almost daring smile. He suggests that for a reward this good, a little bit of risk is a small price to pay. With the terms settled, they clasp hands in a firm, binding grip. Wade acknowledges that the life of an adventurer is never without peril, and they have officially formed an uneasy alliance. He is overcome with joy. With a wave of his hand, he dismisses his worries, intent on heading back to the inn now that Frayne has officially joined his party. The successful recruitment feels like a major milestone achieved, and the group's dynamic has shifted into something far more formidable. However, his departure is cut short when a rough voice calls out from behind. The scar mercenary reminds him that he's forgotten something, their agreement. With an open palm, the man demands his payment of 1 silver coin for the information provided. Wade pauses, reaching for his coin purse as he realizes he nearly walked away without settling the debt. The silver coin spins through the air before the thug leader catches it with a deft flick of his wrist. He stares at the payment with a satisfied, jagged grin, offering a mockingly polite thanks for the business. The transaction is complete, leaving the path forward clear for the hunt to begin.